Well, good evening, everyone. We are here to start the City Council meeting. My name is Mayor Erica Stewart, and I am here to say that all of the council members are present. And before we do the Pledge of Allegiance, we are going to start today's meeting with a moment of silence. Unfortunately, we have a Parks Maintenance staff member, Joseph Moreno, who passed away last night. And I just am deeply sorry for him and his family, his loved ones, and of course, his coworkers. So just take a minute. Thank you. Councilmember Francis, will you do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Francis, and thank you, everyone here. So first off, we get to do some fun proclamations. We have 3 to do today. And first, we will have the proclamation for Juneteenth, which is on June 19th for Juneteenth, but also we'll be doing a presentation at the Mission Plaza on June 15th, but this is the closest council meeting to June 15th. Bless you. And then when I'm done, I will meet Cheryl Vines from NAACP at the podium. So first, whereas Juneteenth has become the harbinger of the ending of the institution of slavery in this great nation, Juneteenth embodies the indomitable human spirit of the past, in the present, and all time. The celebration of Juneteenth gives us all the opportunity to rededicate ourselves to the true American spirit. We are citizens that wish to secure the blessings of freedom, justice, and equality for all in this great city of ours. The collaboration of community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, and local businesses and local government are committed to being part of the solution and guidance in continuing the struggle for freedom, justice, and equality for all. Now, therefore, I, Erica A. Stewart, Mayor of the City of San Luis Obispo, on behalf of the entire City Council, proclaim the 3rd Saturday in June 2024 as Juneteenth Day and recommend that all citizens of the City of San Luis Obispo join in recognizing the importance of today. There we go here. There we go. If you want to say anything, you can.
Yeah, sure. Never a loss for words. I'm really excited to be here today and to accept the proclamation on behalf of the City of San Luis Obispo. You've been so supportive of us over the years. This is our 7th annual Juneteenth celebration, and I promise this is going to be the biggest and best yet. So come out and join us. And you know, it's just not about celebrating, but it's also about the resilience of Black people here in America, of what we've gone through, what we're in the past and what we're going through, you know, in the present. And our theme this year is arts and culture, a glimpse of the past and present. So we have lots of different artists that will be in attendance, some great music. The Edna Contemporary Art Gallery will be displaying starting on Friday for Art After Dark, I think it's called. She will be displaying some Black artists with you know, some of the artists will actually be there as well. So please join us for that celebration. And then on the 15th at Mission Plaza, we'd love to have all of you. Go online, buy your meal tickets, just saying. And we look forward to seeing you then. And thank you so much for this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, next we have the Pride Month, and that is going to be given to current Executive Director Dusty Collier-Worth for Gala at Pride and Diversity Center. And then I'll meet you at the podium. So whereas the uprising at the Stonewall Inn in June 1969 sparked a liberation movement, a call to action that continues to this day and continues to inspire each of us by furthering this nation's promise of equality, liberty, and justice for all individuals, regardless of who they are. Pride is a time to recall the trials and rejoice in the triumphs of trailblazing paths of socio-political accomplishments the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, two-spirit community has endured, LGBTQIA2S+, and continue to fight for full equality. Pride is a jubilant, inclusive, and welcoming communal celebration of visibility and personal expression of dignity, integrity, and living out loud, in which we celebrate the valuable contributions of the LGBTQIA2S+ community in our city, the state, and across the United States. Celebrating Pride Month deeply influences awareness and provides support and recognition to our LGBTQIA2S+ community, and it is an opportunity to take clear action and engage in constructive and inclusive dialogue to strengthen alliances, build and foster a stronger sense of belonging, and advance equal rights. Whereas we, community members, elected representatives, and city staff strongly affirm our commitment to standing in solidarity with all members of the LGBTQIA2S+ community and stand against and denounce all acts of bigotry and hate. Whereas the city of San Luis Obispo is a culturally rich and vibrant community and continues to light the path for inclusion and diversity, in which in the month of June, we recognize Pride Month. Let's remember that every day, every week, and every month, and every year is LGBTQIA2S+ Pride. Now, therefore, I, Erica A. Stewart, Mayor of the City of San Luis Obispo, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of June as Pride Month and recommend all community members of the County of San Luis Obispo to join in recognizing the importance of this month and its legacy in our culture and community. Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I want to, as I prepared, not at all for this, but I do want to start off with also recognizing and honoring the Juneteenth proclamation that happened before this, as Pride as we know it would not exist without the freedom and vibrant spirit of our, particularly our Black community that has led the charge. Talk about Stonewall, like Marsha Pay It No Mind Johnson, valuable community members that led to the Pride movement as we know it. Our BIPOC community has always been at the forefront. So thank you also for honoring Juneteenth in this moment as well. If you missed it, this marked our 27th year in the city of San Luis Obispo of Pride, particularly Pride in the Plaza, as we just celebrated this last weekend. So it is a vibrant and necessary thing. Thank you so much for recognizing the LGBTQIA+ community and our vital contribution to what makes SLO so great. I do also want to honor this city and its commitment, not only to being performative, but also, as I always say, allyship takes action. and your commitment to things such as our DEI strategic plan, putting things into motion in this city to make sure that DEI is not just a buzzword, but it is something that is actively pursued, especially that equity part. So thank you so much, and happy Pride, y'all.
Thank you so much. And now we move forward to Hunger Awareness Day. And I believe Molly Kern, there she is, will be accepting this proclamation for the Food Bank of SLO County. So whereas hunger profoundly undermines the health and well-being of both our community at large and individual neighbors, approximately a third of households in San Luis Obispo County are struggling to afford the cost of living in our region. More than 4,800 children in San Luis Obispo County are suffering from food insecurity, jeopardizing their growth, health, and academic success. Nearly a quarter of local seniors are struggling to meet their basic needs. The SLO Food Bank provides essential support to over 70 partner nonprofit agencies, thereby forming a critical network that distributes nutritious, life-sustaining food to those who face hunger. The SLO Food Bank serves over 36,500 neighbors in need each month across San Luis Obispo County, from Nipomo to San Miguel and from San Simeon to California Valley. The SLO Food Bank distributes millions of nutritious meals to families, seniors, children and people in need annually. The Hunger Awareness Day event taking place this year on June 7, 2024 is a crucial initiative organized by the SLO Food Bank to elevate public consciousness about hunger and generate the necessary funds to continue and expand hunger relief efforts in San Luis Obispo County. Now therefore I, Erica A. Stewart, Mayor of the City of San Luis Obispo, on behalf of the entire City Council, proclaim that on Hunger Awareness Day, we call upon the community members of the City of San Luis Obispo to acknowledge the urgency of food insecurity, to contribute generously to hunger relief, and to participate in a concerted effort to ensure that no child, adult, or senior goes hungry in our community. Thank you. I just mentioned to our executive director that I was disappointed that she is not wearing her sandwich outfit, so I just wanted you to know.
So I will just apologize from the depths of my heart to not have come in full costume. But Mayor Stewart and council members, thank you so much for shining a light on this vital issue. Food insecurity is something that happens behind closed doors. There's really no way to tell based on what someone's wearing, what car they're driving, their occupation, if they are up at night wondering what their next meal is going to be or how they're going to feed their family. So on Hunger Awareness Day, we really open the doors to shine a light and make sure that thousands of our neighbors know that they are not alone and that the entire county is working to alleviate hunger and build a healthier community. Since the start of COVID and persisting to this day, our community is experiencing food insecurity at a level we've not seen in our 35-year history. Just this February, we served more people in a month than we did even in the depths of the pandemic. And as part of that, over the last year, we've responded to more than a 16% surge in need for our services year over year. We're honored to provide compassionate, nutritious hunger relief to tens of thousands of SLO County residents through direct hunger relief efforts, as well as through the network that the mayor mentioned of more than 70 other nonprofits whose kitchens and pantries we stock. In the city of SLO, we are so grateful to our many partners, including CAPSLO, Agape Church, Salvation Army, Unitarian Universalists, and even your own staff in the CAT team and the Mobile Crisis Unit. During this year's Hunger Awareness Day, the Slow Food Bank is continuing a rather recent tradition of organizing in-person CalFresh Enrollment Assistance sites throughout our community, including right next door at the library in San Luis Obispo. CalFresh is a vital component of combating hunger in our community, and there's still much work that needs to be done. Until we reach our CalFresh enrollment goals, millions of dollars from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's SNAP program won't be providing hunger relief to our neighbors in need, nor will those millions of dollars earmarked for our community be reaching the cash registers of our local farmers markets and grocery stores. The economic and nutritional opportunity cost of under-enrollment in CalFresh can't be overstated. Hunger is a local problem, and in our community, the solution is also local, in the compassionate hearts of our generous neighbors who donate their time, talent, and treasure to our caring mission. For San Luis residents in a position to give, we hope you will show your support this Friday on Hunger Awareness Day by becoming a recurring donor and having the entire first year of your generosity matched instantly up to $500,000. So thank you again for your kindness, for helping share our story, and for supporting our compassionate mission on Hunger Awareness Day and throughout the year.
Thank you so much. It's amazing how in such a wonderful, wealthy community, we still have this many people that continue to be hungry. And that's just right here in SLO County. So thank you very much for all you do. So next we move to the city manager report, but before we do that, I just want to give a little bit of highlight. We have a lot of people who wish to share public comment, so if you haven't gotten your card in yet, feel free to do so. And those who have put in their 3 minutes, 2 minutes is going to be the max because we already have so many people that are putting in their input. So if you wish to reconfigure your time, this is probably your moment. All right, moving forward to interim city manager Whitney McDonald.
Thank you very much. We do have a number of items to highlight tonight, so we'll try to kind of get through them as quickly as we can. A lot going on. First thing this evening is tomorrow in the morning from 8:30 to 12 p.m. We are hosting a homelessness response forum along with a number of our partners, including the County of San Luis Obispo and a number of our nonprofit providers as well, to discuss homelessness and our responses to it. It will be held at the Ludwood Community Center. It will include a presentation as well as a panel discussion. We're taking questions from the public at this point in time, and will be a little bit in the morning as well, with a goal of trying to provide us a good chunk of time to answer those questions, about an hour or so from the folks on our panel. There will also be a resource expo with our local service providers and both county and city staff to answer direct questions from anybody if you might have those. So we hope to see people come out for this, and you can RSVP through the QR code that's on the screen or at slocity.org/homelessness. And we hope to see as many people there tomorrow as possible, and we'll see how it goes. It's kind of a new endeavor for us to hold a forum like this, and so we'll hope to answer a number of questions and kind of go from there. We're also highlighting again our slow motion projects and work areas. Work on the North Churro Greenway neighborhood greenway project continues. Our contractor completed slurry sealing of the greenway, and striping and signage work is underway and nearly complete. I'm sure people driving on there see those updates pretty regularly. We're getting pretty close. The roadway construction portion of the project is expected to be completed this spring. We are now through the spring, but we're almost done there. Once the underpass improvements are finished, our public art installations at the underpasses will follow. Completion of the roadway work and includes decorative painting, murals, fencing, and lighting. And I think people can start to see what we envision there, and it's really kind of coming together, which is great. Our pavement maintenance and mobility improvements are continuing as part of our arterials paving project. Our contractors continue in work on Monterey Street. Paving work began Sunday night and will continue each night until completion. Paving on Monterey is expected to be complete this week, with 88 improvements also occurring at the intersection of Santa Rosa and Palm. So of course, we're asking commuters to stay aware of any of the construction that may be going on as we continue with our progress around the city. More information can be found at slowcity.org/slow in motion. You can also sign up for these updates, and they come out regularly. Our email address is slowinmotion@slowcity.org. We are also making progress on our construction of the Cultural Arts District parking structure. During the summer months, Swinnerton builders are continuing to excavate and export dirt onto the site. We have been anticipating ground improvements that are called vibro piers that for some time now, and our subcontractor was able to mobilize a little earlier than expected, which happened actually yesterday. So if you haven't already, you may soon hear and feel those ground improvements going on in around our construction site. We understand it is a bit noisy for sure, and it will be in the surrounding area, but this shows we're making significant progress, and we've put a lot of effort into both trying to let people know that this is coming and what to expect, and also to condense the time so we're making the smallest amount of impact as possible. Utilities are also being installed along Napomo, Monterey, and Palm Streets as well. There will be some traffic impacts to this area through the remainder of this project, which I'm sure people have been experiencing as well. And then moving on to some more updates on our parking program. So our staff continues progress on implementation of our new parking rates, focusing on spreading the message about our upcoming new rates that will start in July. So you see on the screen some examples of the flyers and information that we've been handing out to businesses and posting through our social media and a number of other outreach mechanisms as well. A business toolkit was created and has been distributed digitally and in person to downtown businesses via Downtown SLO and the Chamber of Commerce, as well as city staff. We've handed out those materials to over 90 businesses at this point. The toolkit was created to help spread the word about our parking rate reductions that will be happening this July, with our goal of informing the community about our garage and on-street rate reductions. The toolkit contains a variety of informational and promotional materials, including social media posts, reels, stories, flyers, a postcard, and a set of instructions. This resource what's contained in the toolkit are intended for businesses to help inform their customers of what's coming very soon and what changes they can expect, as well as just really trying to get the word out to everyone in town and far beyond town to come downtown and really spend your money on our wonderful, vibrant businesses and less on parking. So just a quick reminder, those rates beginning July 8th on street in the core will be $2.75 an hour. In the outer areas, $2.25 an hour. Off street will be, including in our structures, $2 per hour with an $8 daily max. Our garage passes will be reduced to $45 per month. And we're really excited that we're going to be able to provide those garage pass permits through an online application process, so folks don't need to actually come and apply in person. However, you will need to pick up your actual card in person for now, but we're making those improvements and are pretty excited. And then the last change is reducing the validation rates to $1 per validation card, so 100 hours for $100. Next parking update is that our new public parking lot located at 1166 Higuera is scheduled to be open by Monday, June 10th. That will be a new lot that consists of 43 spaces. The rate will be based essentially on the street rate around the parking lot. So right now it's $3 an hour, but as of July 8th, it will be $2.25, and anyone having a 10-hour on-street permit will be able to use that lot as well. So we're excited to open that up. Highlighting some Parks and Recreation programming, please join our Parks and Recreation staff for a free tour of our Central Coast Veterans Memorial Museum tomorrow at noon. If you're interested, please sign up at the SLO Senior Center or contact our Recreation Coordinator, Casey Lesage, at 781-7300 or klesage@slowcity.org. And don't miss out on our spots that are still available for our Kid Venture Ultimate Summer Camp at Sinsheimer Elementary campus this summer. Weekly options are available for ages 6 to 12, with scholarship funding available for qualifying families. So for more information, please contact our Parks and Rec department, and our phone number is up on the screen. And our next item here, if anybody hadn't seen the news or maybe even seen it in person, yes, we had a bear in San Luis Obispo this morning. To talk a little bit more about this, depends on your perspective, exciting occurrence, I'd like to ask our biologist, Freddie Oddie, to come up and talk a little bit about what happened this morning.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council and team. I apologize for being in my field attire still. I hadn't anticipated presenting in front of you tonight. I was going to be leading a fuel reduction crew, not a wildlife relocation crew. So anyways, but this morning, bear was found. It ended up being found in a backyard. So our police department and county animal services were able to contain the bear in the backyard. California Department of Fish and Wildlife official biologists showed up. We're able to tranquilize the bear and then safely get it into the trailer and then take it back north of town. But a true testament to how special a place we live in to have a bear downtown, and the protective efforts that we have, not only for our city open space, our creeks and waterways, and the wildlife corridors that we have here in town, as identified in our conservation open space element. Like I say, a true testament to how special this place is, just to have wildlife resources like this. Basically a block away from here. We like them in open space, but like I say, the operation went off without a hitch. It was about 350-pound bear, estimated to be about 7 years old, based on dental records that CDFW biologists had investigated. So had been around for a while, but pretty exciting. But like I say, we like to see them in open space and not a block away from City Hall. So, but everything went well. The bear was released fine. It was collared as well, so that CDFW can track him. Hopefully he won't come back into town, but at least we'll know sooner this time. So any questions, let me know. Happy to help.
Thank you so much. And has this been something you've seen recently in our county?
I've seen about 4 in my tenure here at the city, typically along San Luis Drive, not immediately downtown. We've had other wildlife immediately downtown, but typically, they're around the periphery coming in from city open space. And so, like I say, it's not a unique occurrence, just depends on the day. So happy Tuesday.
Thank you so much for your work. Any questions from Councilmember Shoresman?
Yeah, I remember one a few years ago, kind of near Cal Poly. Just wondering if this were to happen again and you're to see a bear in your backyard, obviously it says call SLO PD, but any other behaviors to do or not do?
Always be aware, see something, say something. So call our watch commander. They can get the word out to the other agencies. And then, like I say, situational awareness is always important. So know your surroundings, for sure.
No, make a lot of noise or don't make a lot of noise, things like that?
If he's in a backyard, we don't want to, that was basically, the concern is if it started moving around. That was a bear that we had up in San Luis Drive before. And so it was quiet, it was contained. And so, like I say, the agencies were able to respond and deal with them appropriately.
Thank you.
So stay in your house is what I'm hearing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Don't go pet it.
We greatly appreciate it. Ma'am, I'm sorry, not right now, but this is during public comment or another time. Thank you
you.
so much. City Manager.
Thank you. And just, we would confirm that, yes, the bear was at some point on Oso Street, but seemed to, right.
Well done, well done.
Yeah, you're welcome. And right, and certainly if people see bears, to not approach them, of course, and instead call our PD, and they'll come out and hope for a very successful experience like what we experienced and occurred this morning. And our last slide, I'll just kind of move on to that, and we'd actually like our Human Resources Director, Nicole Dominique, to come up and give a little update on where we're at with the city manager recruitment.
Thanks, Whitney. Wow, that was a hard one to follow. Thanks, Freddie. Good evening, Nicole Dominy, Human Resources Director. Following the resignation of Derek Johnson in February, the City Council hired an experienced executive recruiter from Peckham and McKinney to conduct a national search for the city's next city manager. In March of this year, the council appointed Mayor Stewart and Councilmember Shoresman to an ad hoc committee to guide the executive recruiter through the process. The national search took place over 5 weeks and concluded in the middle of May. The council is currently in the process of reviewing and selecting the top candidates for interviews, which is scheduled to take place in late June. Following interviews, an update on the recruitment process will be provided to the public in early to mid-July. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Interim City Manager McDonald.
And that wraps up our city manager report for this evening. And then, of course, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer those.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to the HR Director, Nicole Dominy. Today we had our first, or one of our many subcommittee meetings, and just so appreciate all the preparation that you continue to provide. So thank you very much. Any questions? Councilmember Francis.
Yeah, no question, but just wanted to comment on the North Truro Greenway. Got to ride back from Cal Poly the other day and saw the planters are there. So thrilled to see that progress and really excited to see them all planted up. It's going to look beautiful.
Awesome, thank you. I also see the planter median beginnings on Monterey, and it looks a little stressful right now, but I know in the long run it'll be good. Without seeing any other questions or comments from my colleagues, we'll move forward to public comment. So this is the public comment period for items not on the agenda. So we typically have about 15 minutes. Well, our agenda says 15 minutes for public comment. We have about a half hour's worth of public comment that we're going to go ahead and continue on with. I'm going to go ahead and read the civility code that we have that goes along with our guidelines of how to provide public comment for every topic. So first is listen first. We will make an honest effort to understand views and reasoning of others by listening to understand, not listening to find fault, allowing thoughtful discussion to lead to the best possible outcomes. We will respect different opinions. We will invite and consider different perspectives, allowing space for ideas to be expressed, opposed, and clarified in a constructive manner. We will show courtesy. We will treat all colleagues, staff, and members of the public in a professional and courteous manner, whether in person, online, or in written communication, especially when we disagree. Criticize constructively. We strive to advance solutions to community issues. When faced with disagreement, we do more than simply share our concerns. With differing positions, we work to propose a course of action of mutual benefit. We debate the policy, not the person. We will focus on the issues and not personalize debate or use other tactics that divert attention from the issue. For the public comment, also remember to, these public comments are comments to direct to the council, not to the audience. If you, as an audience, agree with something that the speaker has said, make sure you give a yay, we're excited, we support that, or no, we don't support that, but no clapping or booing or loud noises. So that's just our process of what we do. And I will say ahead of time, I know it always feels frustrating because we say we listen and we say thank you, and that is all that happens at public comment because it's not agendized topics. So I just like to share that, especially when I see a full room. Sometimes I know people haven't been to a meeting before, not for a while. So that is that. We'll move forward. City Clerk, to our first speaker.
Okay, the first speaker is Sylvia, then Robert Skinner, and then Mark Schaefer. And if you can line up and be ready to speak, this will go a lot quicker, please.
First thought about writing this statement, I thought I would appeal to your compassion. Of course, I thought, once they hear about the disproportionate number of people being killed, they will jump in. Since compassion doesn't seem to have had an effect, I thought I might appeal to inspiration. When I understood the disparity between men and women in power, I realized that the world doesn't have to be this way. If women were in power, we could bring a perspective that is so desperately needed. When I saw that this council had only women, oh my gosh, imagine what can be done. But now I see a group of women sitting there terrorized of changing the status quo, paralyzed in front of the opportunity of making a change. So I wonder, why have we fought so hard to occupy position of decision-making, just to continue with this patriarchal system? Regarding your denial of the resolution last meeting, you said that you didn't put it into the agenda because it is not a local issue. Then you said you didn't do it because it is a sensitive issue. Never mind the contradiction, let me respond to both arguments. Everything is a local issue. The patriarchal model has used the metaphor of a machine with individual parts to explain complex systems. But this century is teaching us that everything is interconnected and behaves like an ecosystem where everything plays a role in maintaining balance. We have people here with relatives being murdered. Everyone here is paying for arms to the Netanyahu's genocide. I do not want to contribute a single dollar more to this massacre, so I am appealing directly to you to agendize a ceasefire resolution. As women, we have finally created some space to have our voices heard. We have the opportunity to do our part in the change that we want to be. Reverend King said, the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the audience.
Robert Skinner, Mark Schaefer, and then Brendan Jacoby.
Good evening. I'm back here again. I had comments that I wanted to share with you about yesterday's meeting, but after seeing the various events, the proclamations, I think I'm going to forego that, and we can discuss that in private. Basically, I saw 3 proclamations up here, and they were very noble proclamations, and I support each and every one of those. I support the efforts behind that. One thing I really want to point out is that your proclamation on hunger awareness is June 7th. That's this Friday, I believe. That also marks, June 7th marks the 8th month of an ongoing genocide. And last time I spoke with you guys, we were talking about a famine that was just starting. That's a full-blown famine. That area right now, the area of Gaza is basically from like San Luis Obispo up to Cambria, 5 miles from the coast inland. We're in a famine in that area right now, and so let's kind of can think about that. And yes, I asked for a resolution. Let's consider a proclamation. We have to do something.
Thank you so much.
After Brendan Jacoby is Paloma Nava.
Good evening. My name is Mark Schaefer. I'm the Executive Director of United Cerebral Palsy. And right on, just wanted to share briefly with some of the things we're doing in the community so you can share them with your constituents. Our name's deceptive. We only about 8% of the people we serve have cerebral palsy. We serve all kinds of developmental disabilities, autism, et cetera. We have an amazing program in the evenings and weekends with door-to-door transportation. We have outings into the community. We also do long-distance vacations. We took 9 members to Orlando for a week, and they save their money up for these excursions just like we do, and they have a great time, and it changes their lives. We have a week-long summer camp up at Camp Ocean Pines for adults. We supervise a People First self-advocacy group, and we have Friday outings for teens with autism so they can become more comfortable out in our community. We also provide respite services for families and resource centers. On the right-on side, right now we get about $250,000 from SLOCOG, and we provide $6 million of door-to-door transportation with 80 vehicles and 60 drivers. We provide Medi-Cal transportation, veterans, door-to-door service, senior shuttles. We have a great low-income shuttle that if you have anybody that's low income, $3 each way, anywhere in the county. And then we also serve the general public with services to the airport. We do van pools, we do weddings, and we also teamed up with the Slow Food Bank, and we deliver 80 boxes of groceries a week to seniors that can't get out of their homes. So encourage you, if you have anybody that needs any kind of transportation or any kind of support services, check out our websites, and thank you.
Thank you so much.
After Paloma would be Audrey Tran.
Hello, Mayor Stewart and council members. My name is Brendan Jacoby. I'm speaking as a member of the San Luis Obispo Tenants Union. My colleagues and I are incredibly grateful for the council's commitment to improving housing conditions as well as to advancing tenants' rights. However, since my colleagues and I have started talking before you about a year ago, rents have increased 20%. 65% of our city's residents are renters and rely on your action in order to advance their living conditions. And I want to share a quick anecdote. Our organization was recently contacted by a group of 6 housemates who requested help writing a complaint letter to their landlord. These tenants are living with egregious living conditions. I was sent pictures of slugs crawling out of shower drains, mold and termite droppings in window frames, and faulty electrical wiring that endangers the safety of each tenant. These tenants did not ask for my help in order to address these grievances. No, they asked for my help because the landlord was increasing their rent. They are afraid that if they complain, their landlord will not allow them to re-sign their lease, their housing group will be broken up, and each tenant will be left on their own. This anecdote illustrates housing culture in San Luis and perfectly encapsulates the life of a tenant. We are afraid, we are disempowered, and we are unequipped to advocate for ourselves. We understand the city has multiple priorities, and housing is not the only issue that requires your attention. However, housing affects everyone in our community to a magnitude and a degree that warrants the utmost attention and outweighs many other issues. And it's for these reasons that we gently ask to bring housing back to the forefront of your agendas and pass more robust tenant protections in order to ensure that we all possess safe, secure, and affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Mayor Stewart and council members. My name is Paloma Nava, and I'm a member of the San Luis Obispo Tenants Union and a lifelong resident of Slow County. I recognize your care for the well-being of the community and understand that the council has lots of priorities to balance. But we must address the 65% of households in Slow who are renters and are still waiting for relief. Generations of Slow's community are priced out of paradise every day. While rents continue to skyrocket, some landlords ignore the most basic health, safety, and maintenance needs. Let me share with you just a few of the complaints and management response that I've heard while canvassing renters recently. Oh, you have mold? Well, you can just paint over it. Your apartment is flooding? Here are some sandbags. Oh, there's a rusted nail sticking out of your floorboard? Just walk around it. I have seen ads for rooms the size of closets without windows or doors being rented for over $1,000, excluding utilities. No person should be forced to take out loans to live in a housing with mold without running water or resistance to rain. Tenants should not be forced to pay thousands to live in unsafe and unhealthy conditions. Thank you for everything you have done so far, but tenants need more help. Students need more help. I need your help. I ask you to consider the lives of these students. If you were their parents, their family, what living conditions would you want for them? We're paying more in rent to share a closet than what my family pays for our mortgage in the very same county. Working multiple jobs and taking out loans to afford unsuitable housing should not be normal. This can no longer be shrugged off as a typical college experience. Unsafe and unaffordable housing is not a tradition we want to continue or be complicit in. Please, we kindly ask the council to update and modernize the city's tenant protections and ensure that the rules are enforced. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Audrey Tran, Andrew Gould, and then Dina.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart and City Council members. Thank you for your time today and your commitment to bettering our city and allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is Audrey Tran. I have been a resident of San Luis Obispo for nearly 3 years now. I am a student at Cal Poly and an avid believer of using public transportation for a better environment. However, most days I tend to walk or ask for carpool with my friends because the transportation system is just unfortunately not up to standard. I'm here tonight to express my strong support for improving public transportation in San Luis Obispo. Me and many other residents have had instances where bus lines simply stop operating or are running behind, making us scramble to get to our work, classes, or events on time. A more robust public transportation system would benefit our community in a number of ways, such as reducing traffic congestion, improving air quality, increasing accessibility for people who do not have cars, and providing a more vibrant downtown and city life overall. I firmly believe that increasing the number of buses in operation would benefit the greater SLO public. I understand that there are budgetary concerns, but I believe that investing in public transportation is an investment for the future of San Luis Obispo. I acknowledge your efforts to improve parking, but I also urge you to continue to work on improvements to our public transportation system. By working together, we can create a more sustainable, equitable, and livable city for all. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much.
Andrew Gould, Dina, and then Abdallah Hazanari.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Gould, and I'm a student at Cal Poly, and I'm a member of Young Democratic Socialists of America and Christians for a Free Palestine. I'm here to motion for SLO City Council to agendize a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Israel-Palestine. After nearly 8 months, at least 40,000 are dead, at least, incinerated alive, suffocated and crushed under tons of steel and concrete, blown into unrecognizable bits, and children are starving to death as their emaciated bodies lose the nutrients that they need to live. We have seen mothers and fathers holding the bodies of their mutilated, dead children. All of this while Israel's far-right ethno-nationalist government calls for Gaza's Nakba, inflicting damage, not accuracy, and calling for the eradication of the Palestinian people of Gaza. As a German American whose family lived under the Nazi regime, I recognize that this is not the language of war. This is the language of genocide. And genocide is something that we as SLO residents should be familiar with, considering our own genocidal colonial history. The city government has continually refused to agendize a ceasefire resolution, let alone agendizing any policies to boycott the Israeli apartheid state. Moral consistency is a virtue that is difficult to practice, but it is one that is necessary as a democratic society if we truly aspire to be the voice of free people and a free world. For every child murdered, orphan, maimed, or traumatized, hear our plea. This is the first live-streamed genocide in human history. We will not averse our eyes, we will not be silent, and we will not stop fighting for justice. Long live the Palestinian people.
Thank you so much.
Dina, and then Abdallah, and then Julia Alber.
Hello, Mayor Erica. On your Instagram page that you have for SLO City Mayor, you stated that inclusivity is your goal, and that was actually the beginning of today's meeting as well. If inclusivity is your goal, I would like to ask you a question. Have you ever recognized the Muslim community here in SLO? Have you ever addressed or tried to fight Islamophobia? Islamophobia is alive and active in SLO. I've experienced it myself. On your Instagram page, Mayor Erica, you've posted messages for Christmas, Hanukkah, Passover, Shana Tova, Kwanzaa, and even Ice Cream Day and Smoothie Day. But have you ever posted anything for Muslims? What about Arab Heritage Month? Do you even know when it is? It just passed in April. You even posted for Ice Cream Day and Smoothie Day, days I'm sure many of us here today have never even heard of. But you've never posted anything for the second largest religion in the world. Have you ever said or done anything to acknowledge us in your community? It's very clear that you don't care about people like me or people from similar backgrounds as me based on your actions and words, which clearly explains your silence for the people of Gaza.
Thank you.
Abdallah, Julia Albert, and then Dusty Collier-Worth.
Today I want to talk about anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is ugly, it's hate speech, and Islamophobia is the same, it's ugly. We should fight hate speech in general, but per your last meeting, at the end of the meeting, you were discussing that you can't pass resolution for ceasefire because there's a big part of the community calling you to not do it as if it's anti-Semite. But we have to differentiate between Zionism and Semitism. As Zionism is political movement based on occupation, killing people, taking land. It's colonization. It's a state. So if I criticize a government, it's not a hate speech. I criticize USA government for their bad doing. I can criticize any government for their bad doing, especially if they commit genocide. So don't weaponize anti-Semitism and equating anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. It has to be clear for everyone. Now, Semite, where Semite came from? Semite, Sam, is son of Noah. And if we want to talk about history and geography, Arab, Jews, Assyrian, Aramean, all Semite. Assyrian, Abraham. Aramean, Jesus. Hebrew, Isaac. Arab, Ishmael. All lived in the Middle East. So we have to differentiate between these two things. And we shouldn't weaponize. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julia Albert, Dusty Collierworth, and then our final speaker is Bassam.
Good evening. I'm here on behalf of the SLO County Tobacco Control Coalition. We're just following up on some of the issues we brought forward on May 7th at the City Council. And we first just would like to thank the City Council as well as the police for how much they've done just in this amount of time. We wanted to thank Police Chief Scott and Sergeant Trainer for being so responsive and actually doing enforcement efforts that same week that we spoke. And I know they were able to do citations for 4 different retailers. And we also did notice on the Ask SLO app, you've updated it now to include banned vaping products, which we do definitely appreciate. We did want to share that we were in San Francisco last week. One of our coalition members was doing research, and they have found that there they were able to obtain hidden vaping products that are actually banned in San Francisco. They have the same type of regulation we have here that bans vaping products that do not have pre-market approval. And so I just wanted to bring that to attention to the City Council that that could also be an issue here, that even if we're going in for enforcement and we're looking at what they have, it's possible that they actually have products hidden underneath. So if you have a police officer, for example, go in, they might not actually see those products. So usually those are being hidden under counters, for example, and people might be asking for them and then they're bringing them out. So again, we just wanted to thank the police as well as the City Council for being so responsive and to just encourage you to keep up with these continued efforts to address making sure these products are not available. We know that they are specifically targeted at youth, and I'd really like to see a future where we don't see a next generation addicted to these products. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to ramble at you for a couple more minutes while I can, since this may be one of the last times I get to do it as I make my exit from this community after serving for 15 years. I do want to recognize and honor and thank this council, mayor, and staff, the city, for its work differentiating between what is easy and what is right, and always striving to do what is right. And while we fight to do what is right, it is not always done perfectly, but the fight to do what is right, I honor your commitment to continuing to do that, even if it is not always done perfectly. I also say this after serving for the DEI task force and the HRC, the Human Relations Commission, for several years. I do want to recognize the work of the HRC and value their commitment and integrity to always putting our marginalized communities first. Gratefully, Angie Kasperzak is taking the helm over that, and I believe it is in good hands to continue that good work forward. As I step away from my role, or step back into the shadows a little bit from my role with the Gala Pride and Diversity Center, I also do want to call out and introduce Jay Bird on my team, like Cher, one name, Jay Bird, my Director of Operations, that you'll see more and more of as they strive to serve this community. So I also want to recognize also with the work of the HRC and this city and our commitment to our diversity, equity, and inclusion statement, that in this space that we believe that all gender identities are created equal, that Black lives matter, that Indigenous and Brown lives matter, that we won't abide Islamophobia or anti-Semitism, and that no person is illegal. And I thank you and honor the work that you strive so hard to put forward. Thank you so much, team.
Thank you. You will be missed.
Our final speaker is Bassam.
All right, it should be quite obvious that we are in the midst of an extreme and very dire humanitarian crisis on our hands with the ongoing genocide in Gaza. At this point in time, we are at all hands on deck. Every single person in the world should be doing everything they possibly can to halt this terrible genocide. It is important to note that this genocide is nearly entirely funded, operated, and ran by the United States at all levels, federal, state, local, city, and at the universities, and in particular, Cal Poly. The economic operation of this country is dependent on waging war on innocent and sovereign citizens and countries in the Middle East. Many in this country have contributed to this genocide and operation to murder and steal land and resources from Palestinians and Arab countries, be it directly through military means, indirectly through tax dollars, or by some other means. The schools, businesses, residents of San Luis Obispo have a large part, just like every state and city, in contributing to this genocide. Make it absolutely abundantly clear that this is without a doubt a local issue, and one for many cities across the United States. It is the main responsibility and duty of elected officials to prevent crimes like this from occurring. Therefore, this city council should not be complicit with a genocide that is occurring. You have a choice in front of you to agendize a ceasefire resolution or not. This is really a litmus test. The rest of us are shaking on the inside at the atrocities that are occurring and doing everything in our might and power to put an end, immediate cease to this genocide, as we should. Do you? We know the benefits of passing a ceasefire resolution are numerous. The excuses are gone. No more hiding behind local technicalities, laws. You have the ability and choice to prove a ceasefire. Will you do the right thing or not?
Thank you so much, and thank you to all of the speakers. I do want to bring up if Director Timmy Tway is here, or do you want to share around the city's code enforcement communication and what's available on our website? Yes, about the tenant renter education that we have.
Thank you. Good evening. Timmy Tway, Director of Community Development. So I heard the comments about renters in the community, and it's something we take very seriously, and I will always, always recommend that people please reach out to code enforcement. We have a safe housing team that is currently fully staffed, and they do a lot of work on both proactive education to renters in the community. I believe they've met with the Renters Coalition already, and so that's an ongoing conversation that we're more than happy to have. And also, we can't help if we don't know about things, and so reaching out to the city is really important so that code enforcement can direct people where there are other resources, how the city itself can help. And so I really encourage people to reach out directly to code enforcement. I'll be outside if people want to come get my card, and they can contact me directly. So,
great, thank you so much. Councilmember Marks?
Yes, Director Tway,
don't escape. We were promised a memo at some point about a variety of different methods of tenant protection. And I'm just curious when council can expect to actually see that memo.
Yes, this is the evergreen question. We are working very hard on the memo as we speak, in cooperation with the city attorney's office. So I will look to the city attorney, but I think probably within the next month, we could have that memo ready. And there'll be a memo version for the public to see as well, which I think will be very educational for people to understand the current landscape for renter protections and options that exist.
Yeah, and to give the council some guidance about some concrete kinds of measures that could be taken.
Correct.
What different alternatives exist. I really appreciate that, and it'd be great if it's before the students are back in the fall.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay right there, Councilmember Francis.
Councilmember Marks got to all of my questions, so thank you.
That was great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Okay, and with that, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we will return to consent agenda. All right, well, thank you so much. We will get moving forward with our consent agenda. And on our consent agenda, we have numerous things. Hi. One of the items, 5J, I would like to poll. I do have comments about 5K and 5L, but I'll go ahead and comment on those later. Anything else to be polled? Vice Mayor Pease?
Yes, I would like to poll item 5M, the Slack Street, just for questions.
Great, thank you. Anything else? All right, so let's start with 5J, the parking. Let me see if I get the official wording here. Sorry, one second. Do you want to do the rest of the consent first? Yeah, we can do that. We can do that.
Okay, so it's just
Well, so we're going to pull 5J and 5M. City Clerk, do we have any public comment on the other items not including 5J or 5M?
No, we have none.
Okay, so we'll move forward then with our motion. Councilmember Shoresman?
I'll go ahead and move approval of the consent agenda minus 5M and 5J.
Thank you. Councilmember Francis?
I'll second.
Thank you. And before we move forward, I just wanted to highlight, 5L, the police and tobacco, police, tobacco, and alcohol grants. I know someone earlier had commented about the alcohol and tobacco challenges we have at times, and the fact that our police department is pulling together so many grants on safety and on traffic and alcohol and beverage control, as well as on tobacco and drugs. I just greatly appreciate your team's work, Chief. And we'll move forward to the vote. City Clerk?
Councilmember Shoresman?
Yes.
Councilmember Francis?
Yes.
Councilmember Marks? Yes. Vice Mayor Pease?
Yes, although I'm recusing from 5K again, as I did for the first round.
Mayor Stewart?
Yes, and of course, I am still saying no on 5K because we are requiring versus incentivizing. And the motion passes 5-0-ish with the 2 notes. All right, so moving forward back to 5J. That sounds funny to move forward and back to, but thank you for all of your patience. I would love to talk about the parking rates for just a minute. I am still very much in favor in us moving that forward, but I would like to hear from either city manager or from the transportation department around the timelines for the 6 items on page 194. When do we see the validation happening? What are the details of that, for example? City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'd actually like our Mobility Services Deputy Director to come forward. We were able to pull together a few slides that we'll be able to go through in a little bit more detail on what the timeline is expected to look like for those, each of those bulleted items.
There we go. And good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm Jennifer Rice, Deputy Director for Mobility Services. Happy to present a little update for you on the implementation of the parking rate study. So the team has been hard at work behind the scenes since last month's meeting. And so we'll just walk through. There we go. What we've been up to, I'll quickly go over this and then it'll also just move into some of those future items as well. So this month, the last couple of weeks and then continuing through June, we'll be sending notices out and doing some outreach to existing garage permit holders, and that's just to notify them of the new rate structure in those parking garages. And then also, as Whitney mentioned, that process is going to be going digital. So we'll be able to provide them information on that. And those permits, the price will kick in for the month of July, but they can be pre-purchased. So starting June 17th, those will be available for purchase. On the 1st of July, the the rate structure changes for the permits will kick into place for the garage for the $45. And then we'll also be implementing the 3-hour time limit on the streets, which right now it's a 2-hour maximum, and it will be a 3-hour maximum. We'll be reducing the validation price to the $1 per hour. And then while the rates for the on-streets and structures will officially begin on July 8th, the first week of July, we will be starting to work on rolling that out just so that we can test it and make sure everything's good to go by the 8th. And so during that time, we'll have modified enforcement, and we'll be really focusing on engaging with the community and providing education and just letting them know about the upcoming changes. And then July 8th will be the official start of those reduced rates that Winnie had talked about earlier for on-street and the structures. And then continuing on just the rest of those operational changes that are listed in the staff report. So what we're working on this summer is continuing to evaluate and then implement potential courtesy parking options at the library and civic center. Also working with our existing consultant who worked on the parking rate study, Dixon Unlimited. They will continue working with the city to prepare a technology roadmap. So that work has already started. We're already a little bit underway with that. We are continuing to work with our stakeholders with Downtown SLO and their task force, and then also the city's parking steering committee. At this time, we're also working towards reducing down to one mobile app vendor. And so we are working on developing just a request for best and final offer from the existing vendors that we have. And we'll be working on selecting one of those with our stakeholders, with the Downtown SLO task force and that parking steering committee. We'll also this summer be implementing phase 1 of overall sign plan. So we have 2 different phases for a comprehensive sign plan that we are planning. And so the first phase will be once we have selected just the single app vendor, then we will be implementing phase 1, which is basically just rebranding the signs to be that one specific mobile app vendor. And then also at this time, we're starting to look into what specifications and capabilities we're looking for in a vendor that can provide a new gated system for all of our parking structures. So the 842 and the existing gate, well, so the 842, which is currently gateless, the existing gated structures, and then also what will be implemented in the cultural arts parking district structure. So currently what we're working on with that, we've developed some preliminary specifications that we want to see in a vendor and what capabilities that we're looking for. And so working with our consultant with Dixon Unlimited, We've set up several virtual trade shows this week that our parking staff is attending. And then next week, there's also an international parking conference that our staff will be attending so that they can meet and see demos of these from the vendors in person of the equipment. And so based on that, we're hoping to get a short list that we'll be able to take back to our stakeholders, the Parking Steering Committee and Downtown SLO, and use that to really develop the specifications and capabilities list so that we can solicit formal proposals for that vendor. And then further into the winter 2025, that's when we'll plan to come back to the City Council with the final technology roadmap. That'll also be the time that if there are requests for funding or the need for additional funding, that we'll bring those at that time. Hopefully, we'll be close to having a vendor selected for the gated systems at that time. And then once we have a final vendor selected for the gated systems, then we'll do phase 2 of the comprehensive sign plan to really redo all of our signs and make sure that those are clear and consistent throughout the city and throughout our facilities. One additional thing just to quickly run through is just some of our communications that we've been working on. So along with the operations, our team's been really busy on that, but we've also been very busy working on the communications. So we actually do have a whole year worth of communications plan already for how we want to communicate all of these changes and just promote and highlight some of the really just the exciting things that we're going to be able to offer. So in the summer, what we're focusing on right now, and last week actually, we were able to get out a business toolkit to the downtown businesses, and this was prepared and distributed to the businesses digitally through our relationships with Downtown SLO and the SLO Chamber of Commerce. And then we also did door-to-door visits of over 80 businesses. So we were able to provide a lot of different information, and I think Whitney touched on some of this, but just some different tools for them to be able to help share the message about the new rates and some of the other exciting things that we have coming up. We'll also be lately, and our first push of promotions for this month in June really is specifically about those on-street and then the parking garage rate structures, just really getting that message out to everyone. And so we're also incorporating that into some of the other things that our economic development team is doing. They have a Support Local campaign, and so we'll be promoting that along with them as well, just to really spread the message that we want folks to come downtown, really invite them and incentivize them to come downtown. And then also this summer, we'll be really promoting that garage structure, or the structure permit, the garage parking permit, about $45 a month parking. It really is the best parking rate that we have. And so we'll be doing some campaigns to really just promote that particular program as well. In the fall, we'll focus on promotion of whatever single app vendor that we've selected, and then any promotions of any special discounts that that app is able to provide. So while we don't know what those are just yet, we'll plan on promoting those at that time. And then in the winter, we will be promoting the free parking for the holidays, and that's a program you're all familiar with, but that will continue again this year along with the Buy Local bonus. So those will be things that we're pushing in the winter. And then a year from now, in the spring and summer of next year, hopefully by then we have a vendor selected for the gated technology. So then we'll really be pushing that communications, and then just promoting different ways to validate parking.
Awesome.
And just, yeah, get everyone downtown again.
Yeah, lots of things. And I just want to make sure that with all of that communication, will there be a non-digital communication as well? Because of course, not everyone uses social media, not everyone uses an app. So what does that look like? That was probably that, and the library validation was probably my two main concerns.
Yes, and for the question about what kind of information we're getting out, yes, we are we have press releases that have gone out, and then any opportunity that we can to interview with the media, we take advantage of those opportunities. And then we do have, for certain of the campaigns, depending what it is, we do have printed material, either that we're sending out notifications to direct addresses, or for example, the downtown business toolkit that we created, we did have printed materials that we printed up and distributed to the material or to the businesses so that they can also distribute them to their customers. There's a postcard, they can put it in a shopping bag. So we are trying to be creative in the way that we get the messages out. And specific to the marketing and communications, there is a kind of ad hoc marketing team that Downtown SLO members have also helped kind of join up with us. And so they have helped us come up with a lot of the messages and then reviewing the information that we're putting out and just recommending different ways to share the information.
Awesome, thank you. Councilmember Shorsman.
Yeah, I just wondered if, in terms of that sort of in-person communication, non-digital, will we still have like the parking ambassadors that are kind of walking people through what the rates are and handing out flyers and that sort of thing?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so the next month, that will be all of the parking staff, and particularly those that are already out walking about in the fields, our parking ambassadors and our parking enforcement officers. Being an ambassador and sharing these key messages is everyone's number one right now, is to have that role of educator and advocate and just be letting folks know about all of the new rates.
Thank you. I know that was one of Dixon's recommendations, and I think it's a good one, so thank you.
Yeah.
Definitely, thank you. Councilmember Marks.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just curious if this information, it's a lot, and I want to applaud your parking staff for being very active right now and doing a lot on your plate for sure. But could you either create an agenda correspondence or put it on the website or something rather than just seeing it here at this one city council meeting? I know that when people ask me questions, I would love to have something I could just refer to easily rather than trying to remember, oh my God, all these different details. So, okay, I don't know what you want to do, but just let us know how this is going to be available to the public in an ongoing way.
Yes, we can send something out tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilmember Francis.
I just have a quick one. I was wondering when the website's going to reflect some of the changes, or maybe preview the changes, since it doesn't have any mention that the parking rates have changed, and it has all of kind of the old information on there. What's that?
Probably after we vote on it today.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. And yes, it does have some of the preview of what's coming, but it will actually just officially change on the specific date. So like on the 8th, it would change so that our website does always reflect what the current rates are.
Excellent. Yeah. Maybe a little preview of what's coming so people can anticipate those changes. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. Councilmember Shorsman.
I'll just add that I pulled up the website right now, and at least if you're a local business, you can get the business toolkit right at the top of slocity.org/parking. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Shorsman, and thank you so much, Jennifer. We appreciate your team's hard work. Okay, well, I think we can move forward to vote on that, or do you want to go ahead and tie in M next? Do you want to do it together, or do you want to wait?
We can do them separate.
Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. Do we have any public comment on 5J?
No, we do not.
Okay, then can we have roll call?
Motion and a second?
Is there, oh, sorry. Councilmember Marks, second, sorry.
I'll second it. I'll second it. Who was the first?
I was.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Mayor Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Marks? Yes. Councilmember Pease?
Yes.
Councilmember Francis?
Yes.
Councilmember Shorsman?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes 5-0. Thank you to the team for giving us more information and all of your hard work. Moving forward to 5M, Vice Mayor Pease.
Thank you. And I guess my question is about a little bit about process. This is the modifying the city limit boundary on Slack Street. And of course, it makes sense to not have a change of jurisdiction in the middle of one's property for those new homes on Slack. So I certainly support having some action move forward. I guess my question is, is it all right to go ahead and go forward with a recommendation in terms of starting this process? But then we also need to understand a little bit better. It's not just, I mean, if the jurisdiction line is just moving to align with Cal Poly's property line, that makes sense. But in this case, it looks like our actual property line is in the middle of the houses. It's not just a jurisdictional move. And so I'm hoping to have a better understanding of the value of that property that's being, scooched over into Cal Poly ownership. So wanted to understand the timing and be able to maybe get a little bit more information on that exchange.
Great, thank you, City Manager McDonald.
Thank you. Happy to give a little bit of overview and try to answer some of those questions. I know we also have staff from our Community Development Department here, as well as representatives from Cal Poly who can provide more detailed answers to your questions as well. But you're correct that this really is a two-part process, or there's really two kind of questions or approvals that are being requested of the city. Right now, what's being discussed is a authorization for staff to move forward and process this request to adjust the boundary line. At this point in time, we could leave the boundary the way it is. It really is the development of the property that would generate the need to do that. The project as a whole does include a request and a proposal that would develop some of these homes, the front yards in particular, the improvements along the street, into what the city currently holds as our right-of-way in that area. It is not currently improved. Slack Street is narrow, and on that side of the street really is an unimproved right-of-way that we're not currently using. And so the kind of pluses and minuses or benefits that we've looked at and have been discussing are really kind of achieving housing goals of both the city and the university in helping them develop this site, which is very constrained from a geologic perspective. I know they put a lot of work into evaluating what could possibly be developed there based on the really unique geology of the site. And this was the project that I believe they were able to come up with that would fit onto the site without doing too much in terms of, disturbance or making the project, I think, financially infeasible. At least that's my understanding. So what would happen is they've requested that the city both adjust the boundary, which was actually more a request of the city because, like you said, it doesn't make sense for the city boundary to go in the middle of somebody's property. We generally try to avoid that when we can. And at the same time, needing to also actually abandon that right-of-way so that it can be improved, so the street could be widened, the improvements up to our standard could be put in place, and then it would enable those properties to be developed with single-family homes. So it's a multi-step process. This is really the first piece of it from the city's perspective. If we do receive direction to move forward, we will continue processing the applications both for the detachment from our boundary line and jurisdiction and the abandonment application. It will come back to council for approval because obviously if we're abandoning our right-of-way, that requires approval by the city council as a whole. But I do believe that, if there are concerns about that concept, that best to hear it sooner than later. It would make a pretty significant impact, I believe, on Cal Poly's ability to move forward with the concept and what they've developed so far. So with that, hopefully that helps provide some answers. And if there's any more details, we can request either Director Tway or maybe representatives from Cal Poly to help answer
Yeah,
them.
and I don't mean to belabor it in this moment, as long as we kind of get a better understanding. So in order to move forward and have that kind of better understanding about the valuation of that property, is that something that would naturally come forward at the next round, or is that something we should specifically direct staff to come back and to help us to understand what that, the right-of-way, the property that the city owns right now, what that is, what's the value there that is being scooched over?
Right, thank you. Absent getting that feedback and direction tonight, I mean, staff, we would not ordinarily go do, say, an appraisal of that strip of property, just thinking that the likely value, although we haven't appraised it, but sometimes you look at even the likely value of the appraised property could exceed the cost of the appraisal itself. Just depending on what might be going on there. And then in the conversations, looking at the project as a whole, we just hadn't undertaken that work, and probably we would not unless we receive that direction tonight.
Okay, thank you. So we can see if there are other questions, but otherwise maybe deliberate.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Marks.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this, I'm basically in favor of doing this. But I also wanted to make sure that we have an understanding, either, hopefully in writing, that Cal Poly is going to pay for all of these improvements, the sidewalk, the improving the street, bike paths, Lord knows what else would be involved. Because, and also the amount of city staff time that it takes, I think that I want to make sure that we accommodate Cal Poly and that we're good neighbors, and at the same time that we protect the interests of the city and don't end up in a situation where we're just doing a lot of volunteer work for Cal Poly. So just asking if we can keep track of that, because when I looked at the staff report and saw that the financial impact was 0, I thought, that's interesting. How could it possibly be 0? We have utilities, we have all these people down here, we have all the city staff doing all this work. There has to be a financial impact to the city for doing this, which again, I really think it makes perfect sense to do it, so I'm not against it. Thank you.
Good points. City Manager.
Thank you. Yes, in terms of the costs of the improvement, certainly Cal Poly would be making them, building them themselves. And so the street widening, the curb gutter and sidewalk pieces, drainage, all of those components of the project would be solely Cal Poly's cost. They are also paying our standard permit fees. And so in terms of the financial impact, we could have listed probably our permit fees that we have collected and then anticipate collecting as well through improvement plans, public improvement plans, and our encroachment permit process. So they have applied for the right-of-way abandonment application and the detachment application as well. Oddly, we're in the process of completing our user and regulatory fee study, and so a question came up during that process. Hey, what is this right-of-way abandonment fee? Do we really need it? And we said, yes. We have an application coming in, so they have been paying our standard fees. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Thank you, Councilmember Shoresman.
Thank you. Who knew that a little strip of land, so many questions. I thank you to the staff for addressing some of my questions in agenda correspondence, similar to, I think, Vice Mayor Pease's concerns about, the value of that strip of land and when we would provide some feedback to staff about when along in this process that we would provide some feedback to staff about that element or other elements. Some of my questions in agenda correspondence were around the width of the new roadway. Presumably the road would be widened a little bit along with adding the sidewalk, and knowing that area pretty well. I know that the other end of Slack has some traffic calming on it. It's a little bit wider than it sounds like this part of Slack would become. But that part of Slack is also a downhill slant and with more houses on it. Not too many more car traffic trips. It sounds like 18 or so. But just wondering about all the other new family pedestrian and bike traffic that might be on that stretch of road, and wondering when would be the right time to talk about whether or not the road as it's going to be is designed in a way that slows traffic down as it's going towards that intersection and makes it safe for the new pedestrian and bike traffic that's going to be on that stretch.
And can we just tie in all the reports? I didn't see anything about lighting. I saw curbs and grading, as you mentioned, and sidewalks. And I think lighting has always been a concern in that area. And then if you're going to add additional housing, but we see no lighting coming with it, it's a question. I know that's not part of today's conversation, but it ties into Councilmember Shorsman's question.
Thank you. This is a really wonderful time to raise these questions and even the level of specificity around lighting. I cannot recall if the plans currently call for a street light or two in that area. I know that our staff has looked at the plans that have at some degree of detail, but if they can certainly provide more information about things such as, the design of the street and the width and how it addresses safety concerns in that area. I'm not sure if I can probably ask our Public Works Director, or I'm not sure if our.
I also saw nodding of heads from housing.
I was actually, I mentioned our Public Works Director who's looked at some of the plans, and if there are any more questions that he might or his staff might be able to answer about the design itself of the street, and then if there are questions you have for Cal Poly representatives as well.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much. Matt Horn, Public Works Director. Yeah, we have preliminary designs for the Slack roadway. It's a minor addition to the roadway with sidewalk in a parkway for largely kind of post-construction runoff devices. Getting any feedback that you might have for us regarding different improvements that you like to see associated with Slack Street is wonderful to have. Right now, our current design standards require lighting to be installed every 250 feet for new construction. So that would be a standard that we'd look to implement with this project. Traffic calming, typically we kind of do that after the construction is complete, so we can actually measure actual information and address that. And we typically do that with some sort of like note or bond or some condition that requires that to occur. So if that's things that the council is looking for us to specifically focus in on, I'd love to have the direction.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Shorsman, did you have any more question on that? Okay. Great, and I saw a head nodding around the lighting. Do you want to pop up here, Cal Poly, and share that information?
Hi, Mike McCormick with Vice President for Facilities Management and Development. To answer the question is yes, lighting is included in that. Undergrounding the utilities is included in that. Widening the road is included. The sidewalks, the drainage, all of the standards that would come with a city street are included in the project.
Great, thank you. I saw many things highlighted but lighting, so I just thought I wanted to make sure. All right, well, without any other questions, is there a motion?
Is there public
Oh,
comment?
sorry, were there any public comment?
No, there's not.
Thank you, she'd already told me so. Councilmember remarks.
I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Shorsman.
I was just gonna, we didn't really have discussion yet, and so I would like to, I'm not sure what it would look like, and maybe I look to Public Works Director and the city manager, but I would like to direct that part of the process be to look at what might be, I'm not a traffic engineer, so what might be the appropriate preventative measures that we could put in place to, rather than spend too long after the road's been put in and have people get hurt, like look at that as part of the process of designing the roadway improvements so that we can try to as much as we can, prevent some accidents from occurring as those new houses get occupied and we have new residents on that street. So whatever that looks like in terms of adding that direction, we'd like to do that.
Great, thank you. Before I move to you, Vice Mayor Pease, do you actually need that as part of the motion, or is that something that can be just considered direction? City Manager, oops.
I think we can consider that as just part of the direction that we've received this evening. Right.
Great, that's what I assumed, but wanted to make sure. Thank you. Vice Mayor Pease.
So I guess I'm still not, the financial question is not resolved in my mind. I don't want to spin us down some road if the, assessment of the property is more than the value of the property. It seems a little bit surprising. So I guess at this point, I'm wondering if, going forward with the motion as proposed and asking staff to provide some kind of a memo or analysis about what an appropriate next step would be. And either it is at a level that staff can just address it, or we might need to bring it back again if there's some genuine cost implications for abandoning this property.
Thank you, City Manager.
Thank you. I think it makes complete sense that as part of the abandonment application and process that will come back before you, that we include information about the value of the property in some fashion that will be, give people comfort or at least information about what we are exchanging and the value of what we would be seeing in the community or potentially seeing as a public benefit in exchange for what we would be giving up in terms of our right-of-way. So it's a completely reasonable request that we will go ahead and include in the analysis that's brought forward if we receive direction to move forward tonight.
Are we getting some nods here?
Oh, yeah,
thumbs up?
absolutely.
Okay.
I kind of assumed that after your
Yes.
initial comment and City Manager's
Okay.
comment, so
Great.
just for my
So, yeah,
2
so with that, I'm
cents.
comfortable moving forward with the motion.
Councilmember Marks?
Seconding it?
I didn't.
Not
you
yet,
didn't,
not
all right.
yet.
Motion, right? I made the motion, yeah.
All right.
And then, but I don't think the direction to staff has to be part of the motion, right?
Okay,
So-
no,
so,
second. So I will second it, and I.
Okay, already.
Do you have more? No, all right, we're good.
Okay, thank you. So I think we've given direction regarding valuation, lighting, traffic calming, and engineering, and we've got a motion and a second. Can we have roll call?
Councilmember Marks? Yes.
Vice Mayor Pease?
Yes.
Councilmember Francis?
Yes.
Councilmember Shorsman?
Yes.
Mayor Stewart?
Yes, and the motion passes 5-0. Thank you so much for the conversation, and thank you also to Cal Poly for being here to share a little bit of information with us. So we'll move forward now to the business items. All right, item, which is a large item. So every year, of course, or every 2 years, we do our financial plan, but every year, when on the off year, we have the re-looking at our entire mid-year, what does our budget look like, and what will our money look like going forward. So I greatly appreciate the hard work of Finance Director Emily Jackson and her team, and looking forward to hearing from Budget Analyst Riley Kuhn as well. And City Manager Whitney McDonald, will you be kicking us off?
I will be,
Okay.
thank you. And thank you for the introduction of staff as well. I know we're in the process here of pulling up a couple of slides, and so I'll just like to, of course, acknowledge, as you mentioned, Mayor, the hard work of our entire team and staff, as well as council and the public, and doing this evaluation of where we're at, and looking forward to adopting our budget for this upcoming fiscal year. We really did accomplish a lot in our last fiscal year, and included in our financial plan a number of major city goals and work plan items. The staff report and the attachments to the staff report really highlight a lot of that work as well, and I think we have a lot to be proud of. Looking forward to our next fiscal year, we do forecast a balanced budget through fiscal year 25-26. So included in our financial plan process, we do typically forecast out 5 years worth of what we look at in terms of our projected revenues and expenditures. And so we are pleased to announce and show that we are showing that balanced budget through fiscal year 25-26. However, things do take a little turn beginning in fiscal year 26-27 with some projected deficits that may look maybe a little alarming, but they are cumulative. And so the potential adjustments that we might be looking forward to doing in our next financial plan will be really important, and we think should head those deficits off. Our recommendations do represent what we might consider to be a tightening of our belt. We did look at over about $2.2 million of requests coming from our departments for identified needs. And we've kind of really taken a hard look at all of those and come up with a much smaller number, which you'll see presented in more detail later, less than $500,000 in either one-time funding or potential ongoing funding for a few items that we really believe are critical and address really public safety needs going forward in this next fiscal year. We've also included a true-up of our capital improvement plan and that budget. We're calling it that because it's really aligning our projects and our funding to what we believe will actually go into construction in the next fiscal year. So it's not anticipating not doing projects or unfunding or setting them aside completely. Instead, we're really just trying to put the dollars where we believe they're going to make the biggest impact. I'm sure everybody has seen and experienced a lot of escalations in costs, and we're certainly not immune to that. We've seen quite a lot of those projects coming back before council needing additional funding. So we took an opportunity with this budget and fiscal year to do that for really all of our projects in our capital improvement plan to make sure that we're doing the best we can to estimate and foresee the amount of funding we will need to actually bring these projects to the next phase. We've really focused on long-term sustainability of our programs as well and developed a balanced budget using a number of strategies and approaches that we'll be looking forward to really implementing in even more detail in the upcoming financial plan. The last highlight here is, of course, the state budget may have some potential ripple effects on the city, really in the area of reducing funding to counties that then are provided for health and human services programs. And so those budget cuts do affect all of us, and we may be seeing those impacts here as well. So with that, I'm happy to hand things over to our team here to go into our budget in more detail. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, Whitney, for the introduction. This slide is just a reminder of the recommendation before your council this evening. Consideration of the second year of the budget for the second year of the financial plan is required in our city charter, which requires that the city manager present to your council a realistic estimate of what it will cost to fund all of our programs and services for the coming year, and the hearing that you are holding right now is compliant with Section 803 of the City Charter, which requires that council hold a hearing and provides the public with the opportunity to provide input on the recommended allocations before your council this evening. So just like Whitney, before we kick things off, I really want to express gratitude to staff throughout the organization. The finance team is small but mighty, and we can't get these deliverables before your council and the community without input from all of the departments. They're great partners, really helpful. This represents really the culmination of several months worth of work for everybody, and so really appreciate all of the efforts from our departments. And then certainly last but certainly not least, really appreciate the input and the guidance that your council has provided. We talk at least quarterly about the budget, always very smart and interesting questions that you ask, and they prompt us to think a little bit harder, and so really appreciate the guidance and the thought and consideration that you give to all things budget related at the city. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Riley, who's going to walk us through the highlights. We'll tag team it a little bit, and then I will step away so that Madeline can come up and present the CIP.
Thank you. Mayor and members of the council, I'd like to start with an overview of the city's finances, and I also want to use this opportunity to revisit the purpose of operating with separate funds. The city generally operates with 5 separate funds and many sub-funds under those. The general fund is by far the largest, and its primary source of revenue comes from taxpayers. The services that the general fund provides are for a general community benefit. The enterprise funds operate separately. They generally provide services with a specific benefit. They collect revenue for providing that service, and the general fund does not subsidize those. So they do have to operate like a business on a standalone basis. And I'm also very happy to say that all funds are presenting a budget for the next year that are balanced within the meaning of the financial plan framework. So that does mean that operating revenues cover operating expenditures. The framework also allows for the use of fund balance to cover capital expenditures. So you may see in some cases that our total expenditure budget is higher than revenue. We still consider that balanced. And the next slide, I want to revisit the mid-year adjustments from 23-24. Since we are entering the second year of the financial plan, we have to consider both the forecast for 24-25 that we laid out in that plan and any changes that we've already made to it. At mid-year, we made significant budget allocations of roughly $13 million. In line with policy, those were all one-time in nature, so there is no impact to the next fiscal year from the mid-year action.
Thank you. One of the other big changes compared to the financial plan is the ongoing work that we're doing to respond to the storms from early 2023. As has been reported on a quarterly basis, we're expecting to have about $35 million worth of damage that we need to repair. We're expecting to spend those dollars over probably the next 4 years at this point, and at this point have already expended $12 million on storm-related work. It's really important to note, of course, and I try to remind everybody of this every quarter, is that, socking money away is not always the most exciting thing that we can do, and we understand that that's not always most exciting for our departments and our community and the council, but it's incredibly important. Part of the reason that we've been able to fund all of the storm repairs up until this point without impacting service levels to our community and our operating budget is because your council has been very careful to set aside that money, and so we really appreciate your support. There's nothing like a good disaster to remind us of why it's important to set money aside, and so just another plug for the focus on financial sustainability and financial security in the long run. At this point, so I mentioned we've spent just over $12 million on storm-related damage. We have at this point submitted over $17 million to FEMA for consideration of reimbursement. That includes both projects that have been completed where it's done. We know exactly what we spent on it. They have complete packages from us for review and consideration of reimbursement. But we're also transitioning now to submitting projects that either have not been started or are currently in progress. So that makes up the delta between what we have spent and what we've submitted. The purpose of submitting projects before they're completed is just to get them on FEMA's radar. The FEMA process is pretty long and arduous, and so the faster that we can get some of these projects in front of them, the faster, hopefully, they can complete their review. Of course, once we wrap up the projects, we'll need to return to them with additional information and all of the documentation and all of the final costs so that they can consider our projects fully. So it's been a very long year to get to this point between the Finance Department and Public Works and a handful of other departments. So we're making really good progress, and our hope and expectation is that we'll have all of our projects, at least placeholders for all of our projects, submitted by June 15th. And I hope to be able to tell you that with our year-end report here in a couple of months. So I want to move on to we'll talk first about the general fund. Like Riley noted, the general fund is our largest fund at the city. It really funds core government services, funded largely with taxpayer dollars. And these programs and services that are budgeted in the general fund are ones that are intended to provide a community-wide benefit. We provided a preview of the general fund forecast as well as the recommendations that you'll be reviewing in more detail this evening. And I'll turn it over to Riley to kind of walk you through and remind you of the details of the forecast. But wanted to note before I do that this is a slightly improved forecast compared to what you saw on May 7th. The reason for that is that on May 21st, your council adopted the cost allocation plan and cost of services plan for 24-25. Those calculations indicated that the enterprise funds should be paying slightly more to the general fund to reimburse the general fund for the support that the general fund provides to those operations, slightly more than what we had estimated at the time that the 23-25 financial plan was developed. And so that's why where we had initially been projecting as of May 7th about an $8 million deficit by 28-29, that's been slightly reduced to $7.4 million. So still not great news. We understand that a deficit, no matter how many years out, is a little bit jarring. And I want your council and the community to know that we take that very seriously. We're actively working on developing and identifying budget balancing strategies and approaches, which we'll be talking to your council about over the next several months as we get ready for 25-27 budget development. And one of the reasons, and we touched on this on May 7th, that we're forecasting a deficit is that we're really starting to look ahead and plan for known costs that will be hitting us in the coming years. I think we all recognize the community is growing pretty considerably right now, and with that comes an increased demand for services. And one of the most notable of those and the most certain of those is that we have an obligation to bring a fifth fire station online. That's a condition of our development agreement with Avila Ranch. And so we're actively working to identify the best manner and location in which to provide those services. And so for the first time with this forecast, we are including an estimated operating cost for that fifth fire station. I expect that as we have more certainty about other programs and services that will need to grow, we'll be communicating that to council as those figures are known. So that is largely the reason for the deficit that we're seeing, in addition to the ongoing increase to unfunded pension liabilities. So with that, I will turn it over to Riley to walk you through the details of the forecast and for all of the funds, as well as staff's recommendations.
Thank you. As Emily said, the long-term forecast is really the most important tool that we use and as staff to inform the decisions that we recommend you to make. And so we did do some pencil sharpening since the last time we visited and are pleased that the deficit is slightly reduced. And I also want to remind everyone that the deficit that we see here is the cumulative effect of 5 years of unmitigated expenditures exceeding revenues, which we do not expect to happen. We fully expect to mitigate those expenditure growths before they become a reality. Last time we were here, council also asked us to more clearly identify the drivers of the deficits that we're seeing. And speaking to how we did that exercise, horizontal analysis is comparison of year-over-year growth rates. We see revenues growing in the long term around 3%. So any expenditure item growing at a greater than 3% growth rate is a clear driver of deficit. Obviously, the fifth fire station staffing and operating costs are net new and a very obvious driver. Eliminating those costs alone does not put us in a balanced budget. The mid-year forecast didn't contemplate a fifth fire station. It still showed a deficit in the out years. One very clear driver is our staffing costs, and particularly pushing our costs growth rate above 3% is the CalPERS pension obligations. That's something that I think is well known to us at this point, but almost entirely out of our control. Those growth rates are mostly dependent on the market and the assets that CalPERS invests in. Also want to highlight just how much uncertainty remains in these numbers. We use robust financial models based on good assumptions. We make a commitment to come to you to disclose those assumptions and pressure test them. We don't have a crystal ball. We often have to rely on those assumptions. We think that using the best information we have at our hands is the best way to make good decisions. But each iteration of the forecast will be better and better. And as those deficit periods come across, we expect to be in a better position. Just want to highlight how important this is as our city grows, that we are very thoughtful about putting our resources to the best, highest, and possible use. And this is how we'll continue to come to you to inform those decisions. We did have this forecast in mind as we contemplated recommendations to significant operating budget changes. Roughly $2.2 million of department requests came into the Financial Plan Steering Committee. And in light of the forecast, we asked departments to evaluate their requests quite critically and lumped them into 3 categories. First, and these are the requests that you'll see before you, were those that were so critical that they had to be addressed in the next fiscal year. And we also asked departments to defer their requests to either funding with carryover at year end or the next financial plan, wherever it was possible. The recommendations that we've made here are a representation of our laser focus on critical and immediate needs, and this is much lower than we've typically brought at a supplemental budget. We also asked departments to identify offsets for a lot of their recommendations here, wherever that was possible. In many cases, those were somewhat simple positions that were already funded as a contract and were making permanent, have a very clear and identifiable trade-off. Sometimes those were somewhat more difficult to identify, and this does represent some belt tightening for the city. And we'll dive into our enterprise funds next. And I just wanted to reiterate, these are intentionally separate from our general fund so that people who use the services of the enterprise fund pay them, and people who choose not to do not. And we'll start with our water fund. The water fund long-term forecast looks healthy and very little change. Pleased to present the balanced budget in the current year and out years. The water fund, because of their balanced budget, was not asked to identify offsets for their expenditures. They were asked to make critical and much needed changes to their budget. And I did want to highlight that the funding for the Nacimiento pipeline repairs is potentially reimbursement eligible from FEMA and Cal OES. And I also wanted to highlight that some of the recommendations that we have here will be seen across multiple funds. That includes the water meter technicians, the FTE engineer, and the utility billing assistant, as well as the rate structure study. Moving on to the sewer fund long-term forecast, we see a little bit more volatility in expenditures here, and that is in the current year, a significant amount of spending on the water resource recovery facility. Really impressive facility that will help us reduce methane emissions and better manage our waste. That does show up in the out years in the form of debt service costs, so that facility was not free. The sewer fund balances and reserves. I do have to correct an error in the published document here in full transparency. Budget section 3, consolidated financials, tables 3.3 and 3.4 on budget page 13 misstated the sewer balance reserves and fund balance amount. I want to clarify that there is no impact to any of the recommendations that we've made here. This is strictly fund balance and reserve. We're going to update the table and replace it, but we don't like to hide that type of action. Moving on to the SOBC recommendations for the sewer fund, and you will see, as I said, a lot of repeats from the water fund. We are also include required vehicle costs, and I do want to state that when we add a position, we evaluate whether a vehicle is needed. In this case, this position will be traveling, working outside their regular workstation regularly. To the extent that we can use pool vehicles for positions, we always try to. The transit fund long-term forecast is another item with some volatility. Their revenue streams are heavily dependent on state and federal grant funding, and their expenditures are pretty volatile, just driven by the schedule of when we will purchase or replace buses. But happy to see that this budget is once again in balance. And we don't have any SOBC recommendations for the transit fund. Again, the critical evaluation of all SOBCs, there was nothing urgently needed for this fund. And finally, we'll visit the parking fund long-term forecast. The revenue budget for the parking fund reflects council's actions on May 14th. Similar to the sewer fund, we see a significant decrease in expenditures as we encumbered all funds to build the cultural arts parking district structure. And similarly, the expenditures to build the structure are behind us. The debt service cost will be in front of us for many, many years. The parking fund has put forth 3 SOBC recommendations. Once again, quite critical, and will support a smooth and painless parking experience in the future. Moving on back to our general fund and our local revenue measure, one of the largest sources of revenue for the general fund. These budget allocations generally reflect the community feedback collected during the 23-25 financial plan process. The changes to operating allocations are driven largely by the employees in positions, their compensation and benefits changes, and any changes driven by turnover. And the capital changes are driven largely by the capital true-up, which we'll touch on next. Do want to highlight that this was reviewed with our Revenue Enhancement Oversight Committee just 2 weeks ago, and was supported with a unanimous vote from all members present. And I will end on our major city goals. The development of the financial plan was heavily driven by the major city goals identified by this council. And we're happy to report that we've made significant progress in those areas with 110 completed or ongoing tasks out of 146 total. And ongoing was identified at the start of the plan tasks that don't have a finite completion date. And we look forward to presenting in more detail on our major city goals at year end. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we have Madeline.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm Madeline Casenta. I'm the CIP admin manager. And we have spent a great deal on the CIP true-up, so thank you for allowing us to present tonight. Recently, the CIP division has experienced a lot of cost escalation on our CIP projects. And so during this supplemental budget, we took the opportunity to do a CIP true-up. Ultimately, the basis of our CIP true-up was to align the CIP staffing resources with our current project schedules. So ultimately, we don't want funding sitting unused in project accounts, and want to utilize that funding towards projects that need those funding sources. And the way that we really did that was we took a look at projects going into construction prior to that July 2025 date, and then projects not going into construction prior to that July 2025 date. So that's taking our funding needs versus funding opportunities. And July 2025, as you all know, is when our new financial plan kicks in. So that gives us an opportunity to look at all these funding needs again. Just to state, staff did not reprioritize any existing CIP projects. We're merely looking at project schedules that wouldn't otherwise be utilizing funding. And then all recommendations made in this current budget are within their respective funding sources. Try and speak louder. So the CIP true-up needs, we found that 30 projects are going into construction prior to July 2025. We found 7 new assets equating to $16.45 million across 8 different funding sources. On tables 7.1 and 7.2 of the CIP true-up, you can find a detailed list of all of the funding needs. Today, I'll just highlight a couple of those, but if you have any questions after the presentation, we'd be happy to cover those. Mission Plaza enhancements, we previously received a bid back in April that gives us reason to believe that we will require additional funding for that project. We're requesting this funding, and currently we are advertising that project again, expecting to receive bids on June 13th. Rigetti Community Park, currently, we are separating this project from a much larger project that ultimately needs probably much more funding than we're requesting tonight. But we are trying to phase the project to prioritize the community's needs based on their feedback and give them a project with ultimately a play structure. So phasing that community park project. 1106 Walnut is seeking additional funding for the interim public safety center, and that is the TI tenant improvement inside of 1106 Walnut. And then the North Shore Greenway, we already touched on that previously in the city manager's report, but ultimately we're seeking funding for 2 different things, one of them being the public art component of the project. And for that public art component, we have found another CIP project that would not otherwise be utilized, which is public art funded to offset that need, which is $225,000. That would only be utilized towards that public art component of the North Shore Greenway. And then the other part would be removal of the 2 eucalyptus trees and some construction management support on the project, which would be taken from our CIP completed projects account. So kind of 2 different things going on with that project. During the process, we had to identify funding sources and trade-offs for all of our needs. Ultimately, we found 33 projects not going into construction prior to that July 2025 date. 12 accounts or projects with savings identified equating to $22.7 million, again, across 8 different funding sources. And then just to clarify, these 33 projects that we're ultimately borrowing against will be reevaluated during the 25-27 financial plan. You can see all of the recommendations again on table 7.5 of your packet, but I'll cover a couple highlights, and then if you have questions, we can go over more. Rigetti Hillside Repair had a favorable bid result, which is not very common in our CIP department, so we'll give that some extra kudos today. So we have a ultimate we will not need this $200,000 for the project, so we're recommending utilizing that towards projects that will need it. If you remember, Sacramento paving, Drive paving was funded during the mid-year budget this last year, and we have found an interim solution for those bike lanes that seems to be holding up, and we are actively checking that to make sure that it's okay. and that is going to be added to the 2025 paving project. If we were to pave that road during this time, during the 2025 paving project, we would basically come back and rip it out and repave it. So we're happy we found that interim solution. The parking pay station installation project, we still don't know what technology we're using, so ultimately we're holding on to that project, and so the funding would not otherwise be utilized. Also, during our mid-year budget, we said that we would try and find some CIP projects to offset the reduced parking rates, so this would be that project. The full $600,000 would go back into the Parking Enterprise Fund to support the reduced parking rates. The Wharf Wastewater Collections Maintenance Facility, we're recommending $6 million to go back into the sewer unreserved capital account. That project, ultimately, the wastewater collections maintenance facility needs to be removed as part of the Prado Interchange project. Because we don't need to do that project quite yet, not during this financial plan, nor are the plans ready for this facility to go into construction, that funding will be utilized towards some future planning for the utilities department. We take great pride in serving the community, and we've been able to create new parks, parking structures, paved roads, and much more. We have 33 projects currently in design just in the CIP division. 3 projects are currently advertising, and we have 17 projects in active construction. We'll continue to carry out the CIP and deliver tangible results for the community. So thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, and really appreciate seeing all of the different projects and how the money can be utilized in a way right now to continue to work on projects. So I really appreciate that. I asked a lot of questions of Mr. Horn and Mr. Kuhn and Ms. Jackson, and continue to look at how do we make sure that the money, though, still comes back when those projects are ready. So thank you very much. Ms. Jackson.
Yes, thank you. I'll just wrap up our presentation this evening. Just want to foreshadow what's to come with budget. So with adoption of the second year of the financial plan this evening, we will then transition to starting to prepare for year end. The fiscal year ends obviously on July 30th, and we'll be back before your council in early October to present to you on where we ended the year, both from a financial perspective and also touch again on our major city goals like Riley noted. And then it will be a foot race to get to next June when we will present formally the next 2-year financial plan for fiscal year 25, 26, 26, 27 to your council. There's a number of checkpoints that we will have as we typically do, a robust community engagement priority setting process. And so we will have a lot of opportunities here in the coming months to have some more budget discussion, in particular talk openly with your council and the community about some of our proposed budget balancing strategies and approaches. It'd be good to get some of those established that we can use year over year. Just additional policies in our tool belt, I think, is always helpful. And we look forward to those discussions. So with that concludes staff's presentation. And we are all available, and we've got representatives from all of our departments available should your council have any questions about the recommendations that are before you this evening. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all 3 of you for a great presentation, and I will bring it back to my colleagues for any questions. Councilmember Shoresman.
Yes, thank you for the very thorough presentation, and it helps to have just seen this sort of a preview a few weeks ago, so thank you for that. It really helps prep us for all this. And then thank you also to all the staff that assisted with the agenda correspondence and answering all the questions in writing before the meeting. question about transit in particular. I don't know if, who wants to come up and answer this, but it was mentioned that there's no SOBCs. We had for transit, we had a speaker earlier talking about how we need to improve transit. We saw the Transit Innovation Study not too long ago, and it had lots of proposed things that we will want to do in the future. So if there's no plans to move forward, at least right now in the supplemental budget for some of those efforts, would we be looking at those for the next financial planning process, or when would we have the chance to look at those?
Sure, absolutely. Matt Horn, Public Works Director. Speaking on behalf of Transit, there are no SOBCs, and that's really intended because we are currently working on our short-range transit plan, which will come before council on July 16th, hopefully incorporating all the route changes, the enhanced services that we want to provide. Throughout this current or the next fiscal year leading up to the 25-27 financial plan, you'll likely see items in front of your council for additional grant funds that we may be programming for different items. And so there'll be continual budget actions through the next fiscal year to address transit's kind of ebb and flow of grant funds. There's nothing specifically that we want to address with the supplement. It'll be largely included in the 25-27 when we have the new short-range transit plan. We know this new service amounts. We need to RFP for a new vendor to provide those services, and all of that will be incorporated with the next financial plan.
Thank you. The next question I had was about the beginning of the presentation. I believe you were talking about the ongoing costs and how our forecast puts us in a deficit. At least right now, it's a smaller deficit than what you projected about a month ago in 26-27, but still a deficit. And you talked about some of the main drivers of that being the planning for the 5th fire station and CalPERS. And I think CalPERS is sort of our obligation there is sort of an elusive thing that people don't understand. And you mentioned that it's largely out of our control, although it is, because we have to pay for those expenses for the staff that we have. But it is impacted, correct, by all of the cost of living adjustments and all of the new staff that we add. And so not that we don't need all of those and that the staff don't deserve all those, but there are some factors that that we have to take into consideration and put us in the position that we are in, correct?
Yes, you're absolutely right, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Many factors go into the actual models at CalPERS, some of which I understand, most of which I do not. But certainly increasing our compensation budget does increase our unfunded liability absent any other action. That's true.
And so I think our current plan is to pay down what we're supposed to each year, and that is figured into the budget. And then there's also a $2 million extra payment that we plan to pay every year to try and chip away at that unfunded liability a little bit more quickly. So maybe you could just talk about, I think there was some reference in the report that if we continue to pay down at the rate that we are paying down now, it'll take us longer to do so. Can you just talk about that a little bit and explain that?
Yes, and so for some context, we actually make 3 payments to CalPERS. First, we make a withholding payment for every paycheck. Second, we make an annual required payment against our unfunded liability. And third, under our fiscal health response plan from 2018, annually we make an additional $2 million additional discretionary payment. When we set that policy, $2 million was some percentage of our staffing budget. It's since grown roughly 50%, so we're getting roughly 50% less benefit from a flat $2 million payment. If we were to grow that with our staffing budget, we might be looking at a $3 million payment.
So to read between the lines, well, you did just say it. We really need to probably look at some point in increasing that. Yeah.
To make more progress on our unfunded liabilities, yes.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it for now.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Pease.
Thanks. I want to maybe, we did get great agenda correspondence, and I had agenda review this morning, so thanks to everyone for answering questions. I would like to kind of ask the question in order to queue up the SLO rep has requested additional funding, which we'll deliberate on later. But I think we've had some correspondence about what's the best, where would that money come from, depending on how much it is. And there was specific correspondence about kind of the current commitment of the infrastructure investment fund versus saying more of a staff direction of incorporating it in as a capital project in the next financial plan. And I'm wondering if somebody could kind of compare those two approaches if there were to be additional funding for SLO rep.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I think we have a slide that just summarizes some of the information that we sent out via an agenda correspondence. I'll just note that it's described in much greater detail and available online for those who are interested. But we have 3 options. And just for context, I would say that those options go from sort of most specific to least specific as relates to both timing, funding source, and what those trade-offs are. The first option would be to fund all or part of the request from SLO rep by designating a portion of the infrastructure investment fund that is currently dedicated to the Prado Road Bridge widening project and use that to fund the additional grant funds being requested. What we would do if we received that direction would be to return to council in September. We would have an amended grant agreement that the council would use as a mechanism to commit those funds to SLO rep. And then we would also propose that council really prioritize backfilling that project because that's ultimately a project that we'll end up needing to move forward with. And we would recommend that council does that by prioritizing the use of any one-time funds that become available as a part of our year-end process that Finance Director Jackson was just referring to. If we did not have one-time funds available, we would then need to return to council at subsequent budget hearings to identify additional trade-offs, likely through our capital improvement project and what those projects would look like so that we can, again, accomplish the Prado Road Bridge project, which is slated to begin construction in fall of 2025. The second option that's up on the screen is a bit more flexible should the council want to move forward with that, and that is to designate a project as a part of the 25-27 financial plan that would provide the funding, all or in part, to SLO rep for that project. But ultimately, we would determine which projects would not move forward because they would not receive funding out of our capital improvement project budget as a part of the development of the 25-27 financial plan. And then the last one is probably the most broad and flexible, and that is really to direct us to, again, come forward, which we'll do regardless of any direction received, to amend the grant agreement to provide that commitment to SLO rep, which is something that they need to be able to move forward with their other fundraising efforts, but ultimately determine timing, funding source, and trade-offs through one of several different budget hearings that we'll have before SLO rep would need to draw down on city funding, which is estimated to be in early 2027. Generally speaking, our recommendation in council would be that more clarity is typically better and more specificity to all parties involved, but we're happy to take direction on whatever the council would prefer.
Can I ask a follow-up question with that? So I just want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly. So I kind of look at B similar to the CIP true-up that was just discussed if at a future date. Is that correct? Sorry.
Correct, and I think that there's also a potential where we would move forward with the first option, and again, should one-time funding not be available, we'd be effectively going to that second option to be able to find those additional funds in time for the Prado Road project.
Right, and then the Prado Road project, or sorry, the Prado Bridge project has to be started by 26. Is that correct? Or is it slated to start by 26? Let me put it that way.
We're slated to start in fall of 2025 on that project.
Okay, thank you so much.
And thank you, those were my questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Francis.
We'll come back to the SLO rep discussion shortly, but I just wanted to circle back around to the projected budget shortfall in the out years. And I think you guys really covered well that that is projected based on essentially doing nothing at this stage. And you spent some time with me kind of explaining the methodology that we plan to use to address that shortfall, but maybe if we could get into the weeds a little bit, just for the public to understand what's the process that we're going to use, what does that look like to start to address how we close that gap, and how do we know if we're successful in beginning to chip away at that gap?
Yes, thank you for the question. So we expect that as soon as we have the budget adopted for the coming fiscal year, we are going to start working on developing a set of budget balancing strategies and approaches. There's a lot of good examples out there, especially right now. Deputy City Manager Herman and I like to exchange headlines throughout the weeks about deficits that other jurisdictions are facing currently. And so those are always really informative because it's really interesting to hear what other agencies are doing. So we have, I think, some good examples. We have good policies already. We have some good examples locally between the county and the city of Paso Robles recently adopted a set of budget balancing strategies. And so I think we have a lot to draw from. We will be checking in with your council, getting your input. What is your comfort level with the different strategies we're proposing? Ultimately, what's important from a budget balancing policy really is that it's flexible enough to help us both when times are good and we have additional money, and making sure that we're spending down that money appropriately if it's one-time money used for one-time purposes, but also helping to guide us in times when budgets are a little tighter. And so we're going to be looking at both sides of that equation, because I think it's really important that when times are good that we do what we can to maintain that and avoid the down years, but certainly need to be ready for those down years as well. And so, in addition to policies that address both good times and bad, we'll also be looking at what are some long-term solutions and some short-term solutions. Typically short-term solutions are used at the outset because they buy us more time to figure out what the long-term solutions are. And so, the good news is that we do have reserves that we can draw from. We have an operating reserve, which we're still trying to build back because we used a portion of it to respond to the storms. And we also have a revenue stabilization reserve that currently has $2 million in it. And I think that, as a part of budget balancing, we probably need to consider, do we need to increase that amount so that we've got more funding available there for the out years when things potentially get a little bit more difficult. But, the goal overall is to just chip away at it slowly over time. And I think that if we're very carefully considering our opportunities to generate additional revenue, whether it's through enforcement of various programs, there's opportunities there, as well as, taking a look at the expenditure side of the equation. We're not dissimilar from a lot of organizations in that there's a lot of practices that we put into place during COVID. And I think it's time to evaluate whether or not those still make sense. As an example, and I was sharing this with our Public Works Director, our offices downstairs in finance are getting cleaned every single night. And I've had just very initial conversations with my staff, and we're of the mind that we don't need them cleaned every night. And so, I think we need to come together as a leadership team and engage with our staff as appropriate to determine what are the things that we're doing that currently aren't serving us, and what do we no longer need to be doing. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity there to take a look and tighten things up on the expense side as well.
Excellent. I really look forward to hearing some of the results of that process. Thank you so much. My last question.
Can
Go
I
ahead.
pipe in?
Yeah.
I think City Manager would like to add to that.
Thank you. I don't have too much to add because, of course, it's a fantastic response. I think we all know that as well that as Director Jackson mentioned, it's either looking at our expenditures or our revenue, and looking at increasing revenue and reducing expenditures, and it's likely a combination of both of those items that we'll need to be looking at. It can get very complicated. That sounds super simple, but there are many different factors that go into them, and so there's different strategies that we can employ. On the revenue side, we do have our user and regulatory fee study coming forward to council, anticipated on July 2nd. That's one avenue that we would look at in terms of revenue generation. That's not going to save us, so there's lots of other things that we need to do as well. I also just wanted to mention that a big part of why and how we are here now is that we did expend a lot of our reserves on responding to the storms. That was obviously a major event, literally 2 major disasters within a few months of each other. And the city took a really kind of aggressive response to make sure that we were providing a safe community, really helping to clean and address these issues and major capital projects that we did not anticipate doing. And so the reserves served their purpose, which was to enable us to respond as we needed to address an emergency. We are looking at really recouping the reserves that we spent down in one fiscal year, or hoping to do that. And so another, hope and strategy is hoping that we do receive more reimbursement back from FEMA on some of our projects. And, we could look at, I know a number of jurisdictions might look at taking a few years to try to rebuild that. So that's just to kind of provide a little bit more of that sort of background of how did we get here and what are we looking at over this next fiscal year, trying to come back from the disaster that occurred here just last year. So I think for those of us kind of here and in these roles, we look forward and maybe a masochistic way of jumping into our next financial plan, because we know there are ways that we can address this. We just have to go through that exercise and really look forward to bringing those solutions forward, because it's definitely doable. As mentioned, the community really did make a choice to invest in ourselves through Measure G. And without that funding, we would be in a very different place. And it is another just amazing resource that we have in addressing the needs, so it's all doable.
Thank you for that additional context and explanation. I wanted to ask a question about the housing matrix that was included at the end. I don't know if Director Choi wants to tackle this one. I was thrilled to see all of the work that you all have put into kind of figuring out what's already part of the programming versus what would require additional resources, and kind of looking at all of those. And I had an opportunity to chat with you all about this already, but because it's included in the agenda packet, I thought a little clarification might be helpful here, because a lot of the items on there were items that I think we've heard from the council we were really excited about, and some were just a result of a single public comment, or throwing essentially darts at the dartboard of like, hey, would this work? And so I just was looking for a little clarification on, just because it appears there doesn't necessarily mean it's part of our work program yet, or maybe you could give us an explanation.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic question. So, several meetings ago, we brought forward a study session about housing needs and opportunities in the community, and that resulted in council asking for kind of a matrix of ideas, both things that are already in our work plan, coming up in a work plan, or things we could think about for the next work program. And so we did that, and we got some excellent feedback from members of the community that either wanted to, say, pursue this idea, or here's another thing to think about. And so as a result of that, attachment C, I believe, to the staff report today is a revised housing matrix where we've added some commentary on some of the comments we received from the public. I think the good news is there are some really concrete things that came out of the last few council meetings that were easy for us to add into existing work programs, because they were just suggestions on how to go about some of the things we were already doing. And so in red text in attachment C, you'll see we added where we can accommodate some of those ideas that we heard from all of you or from the public, and that really was already in line with what we were doing. So we didn't change the intent of any of the work program items. And then you'll see that we did include several of the ideas at the end of the matrix, and this is under the section called long-term potential future work program items. So they are a long way of saying we aren't doing these things yet, but things that I hope to, these seeds have been planted both at the council level and staff level, and we as staff can continue to develop them and see if it's something that the council would like to include in our next work program. So we're kind of using this matrix document as a holding place for ideas, and then as we continue to vet out major city goals, work program items, we can see what rises to the top as being what you are all interested in us working on in the next work program.
Excellent. So council will have another opportunity to kind of really get into that and figure out what really fits our priorities the best.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great recap. Councilmember Schwarzman.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. I thought I had all my questions answered until this slide was put up, and then now I have a couple of more. Just to clarify what we're getting at here with, I think I understand option A, that would essentially be taking funds from an already designated project and putting it towards slow rep and then going back later, and assuming we have funds at the end of the year or at mid-year or some other time, we would replenish the funds that would be going to the bridge. The second option sounds like to me we would be basically putting whatever amount we decide to give to slow rep into our capital budget. And that would mean, as it says here, trading it out for something else that we have. You did the true up to just kind of see how we can most effectively use the money that we have now on projects that we need to do first, but this would be probably bumping something or more than one thing out of the way in order to provide slow rep the funds. Is that correct? Like a reprioritization?
Yeah, effectively, we would take the 25-27 financial plan and whatever dollar amount we would be allocating towards slow rep, we would find out a way to fund slow rep through that financial plan. So it might mean not funding as many CIP projects as we could otherwise. Correct.
Okay. And then option C to me sounds like identifying a funding source later. So making slow rep a promise, so to speak, and then going back in, say, at the end of the year on October 1st, when we look at what unobligated funds we might have at the end of the year or at the mid-year, during that process, taking some of those unobligated funds, whatever amount we deem maybe tonight, and if there are unobligated funds, using those funds. Is that right?
Yes, correct. And with that option, and if you look out towards a longer term time horizon of when SLOPE would actually need those dollars, there would actually be subsequent mid-year updates that we would do between now and then. So there would be multiple opportunities at which we could realize some savings and be able to allocate those towards the project.
Okay, that was my last question, is when are we anticipating that they would need, well, it's not my second to last question, when are we anticipating that they would actually need those funds?
Early 2027, so think sort of Q1, January, February, March of 2027.
Okay, and then the last one is kind of a crystal ball question, so I won't be surprised if you have no idea. But part of the reason, well, a big part of the reason, the main reason that they're now needing additional funds from the city is because of inflation costs and construction costs rising. So any crystal ball around between now and the time they get a cost estimate, we would, trends that we're seeing with inflation costs that could help us make this decision?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that, actually. We've spent a long time with the folks at Slow Rep, and I want to thank them for their sort of transparency in this process to best understand how we could advise council should we receive direction to go forward. As a part of that, they included not only what we feel like is a reasonable contingency for the construction project alone, and that matches the contingency that we use for city construction projects, but also an estimation of what the inflation would be in construction costs for similar projects, given the amount of time that will happen between now and when they would actually go to construction of the project. I've had the opportunity to confirm those assumptions with our Public Works Director, just as sort of a true-up gut check. And so I do feel like there is adequate both contingency on the construction side and in terms of assumptions for construction cost inflation to give us confidence that this is a reasonable number that's been put forward from SLORAP.
Okay, last but not least, sorry, I said I was done, but I had one more. Do we already, I believe it said in the staff report, but we generally have a policy that we follow for designating obligated funds at the end of the year, right? We have like certain things that we put them towards, and it's CalPERS project. Maybe you could just remind me what those prioritizations are that we usually use.
Sure, great question. So yeah, your council adopted a policy, I believe, with in lead up to the adoption of the 23-25 financial plan, and that's the one you're speaking of. What that essentially does is it prioritizes use of year-end fund balance if it's available, and the prioritization is unfunded pension, pay down of CalPERS debt, infrastructure projects, and then other critical health and safety needs.
Thank you. That was the list of 3 I was trying to recall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Marks.
Thank you. Yeah, I was happy to hear the city manager bring up the idea of revenue enhancement, revenue generation. And I'm just curious, when you were looking at the long-term projections for the general fund, did you take into account the projected sales tax increase that would be generated by SLORAP's theater actually operating in the future? It's built, they're doing plays, people are coming. Maybe when there's public comment, someone can fill me in about the actual dollar amount. I read the memo a while back, but did you, just imagining for a moment that the theater is actually built, it's actually operating, did that revenue generation at all get figured into the projection that we're looking at for the future in the general fund?
Thank you for the question. The answer is that it's not currently built into the forecast. The reason for that is that we utilize a sales tax consultant, HDL, to help us determine how to forecast for sales tax. And they look a lot at what has happened in the past and what the kind of general trends that they're seeing in our local area are. They're not necessarily aware of, new projects coming online that could serve to generate additional sales tax unless something is already sort of actively in the process, like there's a business license pulled and we know the Tesla dealership's moving into town or something. They can, once you get pretty close to that, they start to make some projections based on that. But I would say at this point, it's a little too soon from their perspective, at least, to be factoring in any economic generation that would come from the completion of the new theater.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Francis.
Yeah. This question is redundant, but Councilmember Shorsman's questions about just clarifying A, B, and C kind of raised a question for me. You might have answered it already, but just to clarify for my sake, in A, if we were to tonight allocate the investment, infrastructure investment fund dollars to this ask, but SLORAP doesn't need it until 27. Is there a world where essentially that just sits with a little earmark on it in the infrastructure investment fund and it never moves? We're not backfilling it necessarily because that money just, well, it gets backfilled, I guess, but only on paper, right? That money doesn't actually necessarily leave until 27. Is that my understanding?
Can you share a little bit, though, about the difference between A and C then? Because realistically, it's sitting there in A or C.
I think the reality is that we have a number of different projects in our infrastructure investment fund, and the purpose of that fund is to be able to accumulate dollars for future significant infrastructure projects for the city. And so in some ways, we would be treating it similar to some of the designations that we've already made within that fund. But you are correct that the earliest that we are understanding that SLOAP would need to access those funds is 2027.
But if we choose A, at least that money is concretely in one particular location, whereas if we choose C, is it my understanding that potentially a future council could, because it's kind of out in the ether, they could, say, never mind, we haven't allocated those funds yet?
Correct. We'd be making, if we receive direction from council tonight for any of the options, we'll be returning in September for an amendment to that grant agreement. That grant agreement will be the city's commitment. But if either option B or C is chosen, ultimately we'll need to go through the budgeting processes that will occur over those timeframes in order to make sure that the funding's actually available in either the Prado Road Bridge project budget or in the designation for the SLOAP Theater to ensure that those dollars are there. Hence the recommendation that if the council's interested in the greatest amount of certainty in terms of both the dollars being available for that project and also for us being able to backfill any place that we would take those dollars from, then that provides sort of the greatest clarity on that.
Well, thanks for humoring those additional questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Shorsman. Oh, so sorry. Actually, City Manager wanted to pipe in after Deputy City Manager, Assistant City Manager.
Thank you. I'm cringing because I may be making things even more complicated, but I think, so if we were to receive direction to allocate the funding from the IIF, but in 2027, currently we're not projecting out that far, but what we are projecting is that we won't have enough funding in the IIF by that point to pay for the full allocation. At the end of the day, we would be needing to make that additional contribution to the IIF through the financial plan, the 25-27 financial plan. So in that way, it kind of like collapses all three of the options. We've reached singularity at that point. So, but at the end, it is another way of getting at the same issue. I think through a grant agreement, what we would be saying is we are promising this amount of funding. The budget allocation is how we are providing it. The grant agreement will obligate this council and any future council to actually pay that funding out. And then we will have to find a way of funding it either through the IIF or through another budget. Yeah.
So therefore not in the ether, no matter what.
That's right. It is illegal. We would have an obligation to pay it out and find the funding in the budget in some way.
Perfect. Right. Thank you. Councilmember Shorsman.
Thank you. I think you pretty much said what I was going to ask, but so basically the bridge widening project is set to come out of the IIF in 25-26. So that money wouldn't actually even be there in 2027 when they need it. So, okay, just, yeah.
Okay, I think we've had all the questions that we have right now. City Clerk, do we have public comment for this topic?
Yes, we have 6 speakers. And, sorry, somewhere I have the first one. So the first speaker is Ellie Washington, and then Diana Clausen, Kevin Harris, and let me get my screen up.
You ready for me? All right. I just ran from my kiddos' preschool graduation to get here, so I made it. Mayor and council members, I'm Ellie Washington, 8-year member of SLO Repertory Theater's board, and I'm privileged tonight to speak on behalf of the board of directors. As you know from the correspondence that we've sent you, inflation is threatening SLO Rep's joint project with the city to build a new theater adjacent to the Cultural Arts District parking structure. We've raised an astounding amount in private donations, more than $10 million, yet inflation is having us face the reality that we now need to raise another $8 million. Let me underscore that nothing has changed about our commitment to this project. And while we are optimistic and confident about our fundraising capabilities, we are also realists. We cannot do this alone, and that's why we are seeking additional city support from you tonight. We know that the city has many, many needs, and taxpayers deserve to know what the projected benefits are of any capital improvement project. In our correspondence, we outlined why we believe that additional support of our project remains a beneficial investment for the city. This theater is so much more than a building. It's an investment in the long-term vitality of downtown SLO that will pay immediate dividends, both economic and cultural. A few key points I will just reiterate. This building will be a major city asset that will be controlled by the city, with private donors paying at least 60% of those construction costs. The city will gain a significant driver of new economic activity in the downtown core, with this new venue attracting 50,000 people per year to downtown. And in addition to the 300 performances per year that SLO Rep will be putting on, the venue will provide a much-needed space for the city and other nonprofits to host their own multicultural events and programming. And for a relatively small investment, this new venue will complete a major piece of the city's downtown concept plan and is in alignment with the major city goals. Thank you for your consideration, and we look forward to celebrating with you center stage in 2027 at the new theater.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the audience.
Our next speaker is Kevin Harris, and then Maxine Castillo, and then Dave Christie.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart, honorable council members. My name is Kevin Harris, and I've been the managing artistic director for SLO Rep since 2008. I want to first say thank you for your support so far in this joint venture. I know that you're familiar with our vision and operating plans for what we expect to do inside this new theater, but I'd like to refresh your memory because I believe, our entire staff believes, and our board, which has put so much time and treasure into this project, also believes that our vision will benefit San Luis Obispo in multiple ways. Let's jump ahead to the year 2030. SLO Rep is in its third full season in our new theater, drawing more than 50,000 patrons and generating more than $4 million in annual economic activity in the downtown core. In our 215-seat main stage theater, we are producing 162 performances a year, while offering 47 days for use by other nonprofits and community groups. In our 100-seat black box theater, we are producing 162 performances a year, while offering 80 days for use by other community groups. From an artistic standpoint, this new building will, of course, give us the opportunity to produce higher quality theater, making us even more attractive to residents and visitors alike. But more importantly, this new facility will allow us to produce new works by up-and-coming playwrights so they can tell their stories in our community, which will in turn enable us to become a real part of the artistic conversation nationally. And why is that important? Because being a part of that conversation will help us attract diverse casts, the best actors and playwrights, both established and upcoming, and bring them to San Luis Obispo. Being a part of that conversation will help burnish San Luis Obispo's reputation as a great place to live, work, and play. And that's how we will help downtown SLO thrive and enrich the cultural vibrancy of the Central Coast. Thank you so much for your partnership and considering helping us get there.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, council members. My name is Maxine Castillo, and I'm a 5th grader at C.L. Smith Elementary. I've never spoken to a city council before. In fact, until I enrolled in SLO Rep's Academy of Creative Theater, I had very little public speaking experience. But that's the beauty of being part of SLO Rep's ACT program. SLO Rep has given me a real gift, the chance to challenge myself in a comfortable setting, to try new things, to put myself out there. And here I am tonight, trying something new, participating in our city's democratic process. Thank you for this opportunity. You're very busy, so I will be brief. I would like to make 2 points tonight. First, ACT is a great program. I know that one reason SLOREP has been able to expand his program so much is because of your support. Thank you for helping me give more kids like me this great opportunity. Second, I hope you can find a way to help SLOREP even more with their efforts to build a new theater. My ACT friends and I would be honored to have the chance to learn and perform in the new space. It would be exciting and inspiring. We would work hard and look forward to welcoming even more students to the program as ACT and SLOREP continue to grow. Thank you for your consideration. I know that everyone involved with SLOREP will work hard to make you very glad you supported the new theater.
Thank you so much.
Dave Christie, Barry Price.
Yes, you have to follow her.
I'm taller and bigger and louder. Madam Mayor, council members, I'm Dave Christie, a city resident. I recently retired from a 36-year academic career in several university business schools, including 9 years as Dean of Cal Poly's Orfalea College of Business. I urge you to approve additional support for SLOREP. My advocacy in public activities since I came to Cal Poly has always been on economic development, and I'd like you to think of this in two different ways. We have what I'd call small E economic development. We're going to sell tickets, people are going to have dinner, they're going to pay to park, there are going to be taxes on all those things. And as Kevin mentioned, we anticipate a huge number of people participating in the activities that we think of with SLOREP. But I'd also like you to think of big E, economic development. You're looking for a new city manager, and you've engaged a nationwide search firm to help you find somebody. Effective business and civic leaders know that their success depends upon attracting and retaining the best talent, and they know it's vastly easier to do this if the business or the public sector activity is located in a community that offers effective government, good schools, excellent health care, abundant recreational opportunities, and a thriving cultural scene. In turn, these talented employees are citizens more likely to be engaged in our community, provide financial and volunteer support for local nonprofits, and attract more people with similar values. This is a picture of a healthy community. The Assistant City Manager, McDonald, mentioned that with Measure G, we were investing in ourselves. These are the kind of people that will authorize a measure, because they also believe that that's the kind of community we want to live in. And that has much bigger, long-standing economic benefits than the revenues that we get from individual ticket sales or the taxes that go with them. So I really think that this is a great idea. The last thing I'll say, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, the city participated in building the PAC. It's a great facility, and there were 40% private funds that supported that. We're talking 60% here. This is a great deal, and I hope that you'll choose to support it.
Thank you so much.
Barry Price is our final speaker.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart and council members. So I'm not here to speak to the SLOREP. There were plenty of great speakers before me, but I want to say that I appreciate the work that the council and staff are doing on managing our city budget. I've spoken previously about the need to create additional staff positions for code enforcement, so our staff size is commensurate with the size of our growing city and also with the unusually high proportion of tenancies in the city. We probably need 2 to 3 more positions there. there to keep up. Given the conditions that we're seeing out there, it's likely that increased fees and fines for repeat offenders and other bad actors would cover the cost of those positions. But tonight I want to highlight another need for more resources for the city attorney's office. California Attorney General Rob Bonta just issued a directive to city attorneys regarding their expanded enforcement authority under the Tenant Protection Act, which is one of our most powerful tools for protecting renters from unscrupulous landlords. We now need a process for the city attorney to receive reports of violations and the resources for them to respond and to seek remedies. I encourage you to direct staff to use these new enforcement authorities, and I ask you to fund the department appropriately so they can do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you to all of our speakers. We greatly appreciate you. And we'll move back to council. And before we actually come back to council deliberation, is there anything that any of the three of you would like to respond based on the comments that were provided? Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so moving on to deliberation. There's a lot of conversation, obviously, about slow rep. Also, Councilmember Shoresman, you commented about additional funding needing for CalPERS. Is that something you're thinking of in this supplemental budget or for the 25-27 financial plan? And then lastly, the code enforcement / earlier comments today around housing. Do we want to talk about that at all? Those are kind of my three questions for you all. Councilmember Shoresman.
No, I think in terms of CalPERS, I think our approach right now for this current year that we're looking at, I think we should probably stay the course. Although, you know, I just want us to recognize that we do need to look at that going forward, and it sounds like staff will be considering that as we move into the 25-27 financial plan. And I think our prioritization is strong for the use of unobligated funds at the end of the year and at the mid-year. Although, you know, I know there's going to be just some discussion about the slow rep proposal, and so that might be a place that we could talk about using some of our unobligated funds for a one-time project. Those unobligated funds at the end of the year and mid-year are good for one-time investments like this too. So I can see that being an opportunity to, you know, maybe designate a certain percentage or, excuse me, a certain amount of those unobligated funds for slow rep. I have other things to say, but that, yeah. I wouldn't suggest messing with that designation for this particular. I will, let me grab a sip here. I will talk about slow rep a little bit and just the budget in general. I heard everything that you all said. I think staff did an amazing job of reevaluating as we head into the second year of the financial plan, looking at the CIP budget, seeing how we can best use the funds that we have. You used the word tightening our belts. I think it's pretty clear that we're not anticipating budgeting conservatively. We're not anticipating having some of the surpluses, I guess that you could say. In the last few years, I've been pretty lucky since I've been on council. We've been able to kind of spend pretty openly and easily, including the first $3.9 million challenge grant that we gave to Slow Rep a couple of years ago. That was probably, I was thinking about it earlier today, one of the favorite votes that I've been able to do on council. That's the fun stuff, right? When you get to give an outstanding arts organization a big chunk of money to build a building in the heart of our downtown. Things are a little bit tighter now, and I heard that loud and clear in the report that you all gave. So I still love Slow Rep. I'm still excited about this project. Nothing has changed about my commitment to it. I am interested in seeing how we can provide some additional funds to the project. I'm not sure, to be totally honest, that I'm comfortable right now today on 2.76 million. I think it involves a lot of trade-offs for us in the next couple of years. And I think that maybe of all the options that were provided by staff, C is the one that I feel most comfortable with, and maybe starting with a smaller amount, maybe, you know, enough to kind of spur the donations that they need to kind of raise the rest of their funds. I would, you know, just to throw out a number, I would say maybe half, and then look down the road to designate the other half. But that's only because of where we are right now, and I think I'm concerned about designating funds for something that designating funds that we don't have. So I just want to try to be fiscally thoughtful and responsible about this, and curious what the rest of you have to say.
Great, thank you so much. Vice Mayor Pease.
Thanks, great opening remarks. I also appreciate the structure of the budget. I think it's very thoughtful. I think we've had a lot of buildup to it, so I don't have changes at this time other than the conversation about slow rep. And before that, though, we did have a conversation at agenda review this morning, and what I shared was that you know, a lot of the operating budget changes, SOBCs, are converting contract positions to FTEs. And I was remembering that when we were at the State of the City and a question was posed about what keeps you up at night. And I realized as I was going through this budget that actually is one of the things, because that is our job, is to be disciplined in the budget. And as we add FTE in a uncertain fiscal future, that's our risk, you know? We're committing to people to have these jobs, and we don't want to be in a position for layoffs. So I know that we kind of had that conversation this morning, and I think staff is super aware, and so I think what is in this budget is what is necessary. And so, but it weighs heavily in as we go forward, I think, and we'll of course be keeping that in mind. And it is a shift, right? Even, you know, so 7.5 years for me in, and now I'm like, hey, everybody, let's be disciplined. So maybe not fair. So I think that's my general comment about the budget. In terms of slow rep, I do support funding. In some ways, you know, if we're moving this or moving that, it doesn't really seem to me. I mean, if we're committing to it, we're committing to it. Option B seemed like a good middle ground that we folded into the next budget cycle. Frankly, I'd be fine with A and just like, let's get her done, and then we'll figure out, because honestly, that bridge project, $10 million is a very round number because we don't know everything about that bridge project, right? So there's still a lot of unknowns even on that one. In terms of the dollar amount, it's last in or last out that our funding, what's that? First in. Yeah. So yeah. So we're the last resort. And so with that in mind, I would be comfortable going at, you know, probably pretty close to that 2.76 at this time. So I think half isn't quite enough to get them over the finish line. And I think that this is a really, in which we all know, important, wonderful project, and a super important investment, a relatively good deal for us as a community to be able to have this building built. So yeah, that's where I am.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Marks.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, yeah, we've talked about this budget a lot, and I feel really comfortable with it. I would like to compliment staff for all your hard work. And no crystal ball. I appreciate transparency on that level. None of us have it. But I do feel that the city is, despite the concept of a deficit in the future and out years, I do feel the city is basically in very good financial condition. And as the liaison to the Investment Oversight Committee, I know we also have some really solid backing in terms of our investments, in terms of the interest that's generated there. So, and of course, I'm by nature thrifty, so I definitely want to make sure that we're not being lavish at all in anything. We're very, very straightforward. I think our residents expect that out of us. I do want to say that looking at climate change is something we haven't talked about too much tonight, but when you're looking at the overhead expenditures, I just hope that there is a lot of emphasis among staff on reducing the amount of energy that we use however possible. Like with that little one item on the WRF, the extra electricity bill. Well, okay, let's look at all of that. What can the city continue to do to streamline our operation and become more and more responsible in terms of energy use? And I think there are ways we can do that. We don't have to get into it now, but I'm hoping that as we look at the future, we can say, yeah, and one of the ways we're going to get more thrifty is we're going to cut down our electric bills. So as far as the slow rep option goes, I trust staff and I trust the due diligence that was done in coming up with the amount of 2.76 as being justified. And that was my question always when I met with Slow Rep. It's like, well, wait a second, where do you come up with that number? And I feel that it is it's a projection, but I do feel it's based in fact. As Council Member or Vice Mayor Pease said, this would be the last money in. What that means is, and that applies to the other challenge grant as well, what that means is that if it turns out that the actual bid is lower than what we think it was, like the parking garage itself, the bid came in lower. The bond, we got a much better bond rate than we ever thought we could get. I've forgotten the project, but one also just came in under bid here tonight. There's a lot of uncertainty out there, but there is a possibility that the bid actually may be lower, and in that case, they're not going to need our challenge grant. And I trust that Slow Rep would be forthright in that. If they don't need it, they won't take it. I do want to say that I think Slow Rep's request, I think that I feel they need and we need certainty. And so I'm in favor of option A at this point. And the reason that I feel certainty would be an asset at this point is that it would also help inspire the private donors to come up with more money. In fact, we were told that there is $1 million in the correspondence with Slow Rep, as I recall, that there's a donor who's ready to donate another $1 million if the city comes forward with this additional portion of the challenge grant. And the other reason I think that certainty is good is that our staff has kind of requested a couple of times that certainty is good in terms of staff planning. And the other thing is, as our interim city manager said, it may all, no matter which option we choose, it may all end up being kind of the same thing of what's actually happening in terms of various other projects, in terms of the economy and like that. So we may have to move things around anyway. So I would like to just go for option A, create the certainty for everybody, and ask for staff to come back to us with a supplemental budget request in September, or when would that be? Whenever that would be.
It would be September, and it'd be an amendment to the existing grant agreement that we have with Slow Rep for the original grant amount.
Okay, alrighty, so those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Francis.
Yeah, thank you to everybody for all your comments, and I'll, of course, pile on with just gratitude to staff for not only tonight's presentation, but the previews, the communication, the 221s. You all have done an incredible job of bringing us all down into the weeds with you, and to all of the departments that have done a ton of work to get this to us in such a clear way. I really appreciate it. To answer the mayor's questions, covering CalPERS, coming to Councilmember Shorsman's point, I really would like to make sure that we review that during our next budget setting. So just kind of earmark that for the future. Coming to the public comment on code enforcement and potential resource needs in the city attorney's office, I very much want to look at that as part of our housing memo when that comes out, and just see what our resources needs are before we have a discussion about changing budgets tonight, so that we can do that in a really strategic way. And then on to Slow Rep. I liked your comments, Councilmember Marks, on being thrifty. And I also appreciate that we really, as a council, we need to protect the budget of the city, and we need to be making sure that we're having a balanced budget. But we also really need to be forward-thinking and make investments in our community and in our future. And I think you mentioned the word certainty, and it's come up several times tonight. I think the key that I heard from Slow Rep is that if they don't have this money guaranteed, then the idea of the theater really comes into question. And I loved the quote, I think, from Mr. Christie, the investing in the thriving cultural scene. I think this is an investment in our future this evening. And so I'm eager to support, I suppose, option A, although it sounded like all of those could sort of come together in some way, and it might just be a matter of delaying or spreading out some of our CIP in the future in order to make sure that we get our Prado Bridge and our investment in this theater across the finish line. We invested in this parking garage, which was not necessarily my favorite vote, but I did it on the pretense that this was going to be kind of the cornerstone of our arts district. And I really want to make sure that we get that there. So those are my comments for now. Dollar amount? It's the full dollar amount, and option A with flexibility to discuss.
Great, thank you. I'm going to share my piece. Are you want a media question? Okay, great. So, of course, all of the gratitude that we just have already shared. I have to say that as I think sometimes the public may not know how many meetings we have on a constant basis with constituents, with staff, with people who are asking about our budgets, our programs. And when I look back and think about how many meetings, whether it was the 221s with another council member, or whether it was just me asking questions of staff, or meeting with Slow Rep, or meeting with other community members that were concerned, there's a lot that comes into this. And so I guess just wanted to say that out loud in case anyone listens to this in the future. I never know with YouTube. But this investment is something that is really something I find is important. We are looking at the continuation of, back in the early 90s with the Performing Arts Center, and as it's been said a couple of different times, 40% of private donors, this time 60%, when money is even more tight right now, when money is construction's even more expensive, and the donors continue to come. And I think that we are, in a sense, one of the donors in that moment, and we are also continuing to come and partner, and I think that's important. I have been part of nonprofits many times before, and when people say, here, I'll give you part of what you asked for, that is so great and helpful, and I appreciate people's frugality, I definitely do. And I also know at times that is really the amount that's needed. Otherwise, they can't move forward. And so that was pretty clear in the conversations that I had with SLO Rep and with staff. And at the same time, I really appreciated how, when I looked at, and here's the escalation we'll look at for construction, and here's the additional donors that might be able to come, or pretty solid they might be able to come if this money can come from the city. I felt like there's been a lot of conversation back and forth, and so I really appreciate that commitment and all the time and energy that's been spent by the board and the staff at SLO Rep, as well as the staff here at the city. So, and I also appreciate Councilmember Francis, you know, what you said, this parking structure, the Cultural Arts District someday will come with a cool acronym versus CATSPA. But truly, when I think of this, this is not just the 300 performances and the indirect and the direct economic activity. I look at economic resiliency as one of our major city goals. I look at the downtown being thriving is one of our goals. And I too, last year, got to sit on the investment oversight committee. This is something we can do. And it is stressful when I think about, back to keeping me up at night, I do think about that 4-year outlook in our budget. This is not something I think of lightly. This is something I think of very, very important. And I also felt confident in our many conversations with Director Jackson and her team that this is also something that you are all looking at deeply, and what do we do about the revenue and expenses? So I think I will depend on and trust on staff to continue to work on that and share with us how do we work into that. I think that the contract versus full-time employees always concerns me, as you know, Riley, as you said, it's really $3 million now, maybe we should be considering. I'm not asking to make that change today, but I definitely think that this council, as we go forward into 25, 27, that we consider, we look at that. And obviously I'm highlighting that to staff right now for a bookmark for future. What does that look like? Our fiscal conservative policies have given us the ability to do so much more than a city of our size. Yes, I want to see more with public transportation. I wanted to from before I came on this council and realized the challenges and the barriers. That being said, we have the short-term transit policy study coming to us on July 14th. We have potential, some hope, and we heard from Right On earlier some amazing opportunities for us to invest in and guide. So I will leave that aside a little bit right now. But that being said, I also look at our housing is continually a conversation around what do we do to help educate our renters and our tenants. And we heard about hunger awareness today. We can't do something unless we know. We also have to have enough code enforcement to do that. And also, as someone who's been in one of those times in the past of my life, I wasn't going to say something. It didn't matter if we had 20 code enforcement officers, because I did not want to be evicted out of my house because we could not afford to go somewhere else. And so I think there's got to be something more than just us as having more code enforcement officers. I think I am very thankful for people creating a tenants union, because I think that is something that might be helpful, that is outside of city staff and elected, as to how to help people truly that are needing the help, that are having the housing situations that are not okay. Substandard housing is not okay. None of us want to see that. And so I just look at our budget, while we're not totally talking about that today, we are in the whole realm of the housing matrix we talked about for the future, the funding of contract versus full-time employees, the additional employees and what that will look like for CalPERS in the future and what our payments are, and the commitment we make with tax dollars of the community members. How does that all work? So keeping me up at night, all of this. But at the same time, I am also very thankful for the fact that our community continues to invest in what we want in this city. Our staff continues to go deep into all of these details, and this council continues to really care about all of this. So sorry to go on and on for a long time, but I really feel like there's just so much we're really looking at. So going back to the slow rep, I do feel like the whole amount, I would feel comfortable with really A, B, or C, quite honestly. But A or B feels a little better to me because I would like to have some real clear guidelines for staff and for this council as we continue to look at when the money does come available, how exactly we're going to plug that in. I also think that if we have to have that $10 million or whatever that looks like, quite honestly, for Prado Bridge. So I also look at this and realistically say, is that 10 million the right amount? We don't 100% know. And I know it's been said before, well, we weren't told to look for grants, or we weren't told to look for something. Whatever you need to do, let us know how we can help when it comes to grants or advocacy or whatever that might be, because I know that is something you have all done so well, is continue to bring additional funding by millions and millions of dollars into this city. So thank you for that as well. Councilmember Shorsman.
Thank you. So I haven't heard a definite 3 people on one of these 3, but maybe I just missed it. But I'll just kind of summarize where I'm at, and thank you for, I got so concerned about what we were going to do about slow rep that I forgot to mention the other things. So I look forward to, in the financial plan, looking at what we can do to improve CalPERS as our CalPERS, meeting our CalPERS obligations. Also know that we have a lot of work that we've been talking about doing around housing and tenants' rights and tenant code enforcement and improving our rental stock. And so I look forward to that in the next fiscal year and next financial plan as well. The thing that keeps me up at night, seems like we're kind of talking about that right now. The thing that keeps me up is keeping the financial commitments that we've made. I have lost sleep many nights since we first saw that table of the Infrastructure Investment Fund going down, down, down until we only had about $750,000 left in it at the end of 25-26. So that I appreciate the concern about trying to provide certainty to slow rep, to city staff. Or what I was hearing earlier is that any of these options provide some certainty. And but I do think the details matter, and I think that taking the money out of the Infrastructure Investment Fund is just putting us at risk for some of the commitments that we've already made. So I'm not in favor of A. I'm also not in favor of B for kind of the same reason, because we have a huge list of capital improvement projects. We have parks that we have promised to neighborhoods many, many years ago that are still not built. We have infrastructure that's, we have an old city with old infrastructure, with, water mains and pump stations and things that we need to replace, and all of those things are in our financial plan. So that's why I think no matter what amount we decide to commit tonight to slow rep, I am most comfortable with C, because I think that it's maybe not the most comfortable for some folks here, but it's the most comfortable for me because I think it's using the type of funds, the unobligated funds that we would normally use for this type of one-time expenditure. So that's where I'm at, and I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you saying that too, around the one-time funds. And I think when I look at A or B, while we're taking money out of the one fund, the IF fund, my understanding is that as much as we can, the undesignated funding going forward would go back into the IF to fill it back up. So I think that what you're saying would happen either way. Is that?
Yes, assuming that we have funds unobligated at the end of each year and at the end of the mid-year to put back into it. That's one of the 3 places that is part of our policy to put funding back into.
Right, okay, thank you. Just making sure I was understanding what you were saying.
There is overlap for sure
Yeah.
between A and C, but the problem right now that I see is that we have funds in the infrastructure investment fund right now for the bridge widening that will need to be used before the slow rep construction begins.
Got it, thank you. Councilmember Marks. Oh, can you press that again?
Oh, yeah, I pressed it, there it is. Yeah, well, this has been a great discussion, and at the time that it's appropriate, I'd like to move to approve the staff recommendation and also approve the amendment to the challenge grant in the amount of $2.76 100 million. Okay.
2.76 million.
I'm getting tired. Okay. The requested amount, and if we could leave it there, and my preference is A, as I said. I think that it really, there are distinctions without a difference because we're going to be using the same method of backfilling the fund anyway. So I would say going with, do we need 2 separate motions or is one good enough? That's what I don't know.
One motion is fine.
Okay. So that's what I would like to say is approve the staff recommendation adoption of the fiscal year 2024-25 supplemental budget and approve the budget request for an amendment to the challenge grant for slow rep in the requested amount.
With option A.
With option A.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Francis.
I would like to second.
Okay, thank you for the second. Any other deliberation before we move to roll call? Okay, can we have roll call, City Clerk?
Councilmember Marks?
Yes.
Councilmember Francis?
Yes.
Councilmember Shorsman?
No.
Vice Mayor Pease?
Yes.
Mayor Stewart?
Yes, and the motion passes 4-1. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate all of this work on the budget and for all of the commenters. And now we move to the final part of our meeting, which is the, second to final, I guess, liaison reports and communications. And our Councilmember Francis.
Yeah, it was an exciting little period on the 29th of May. I was really lucky to get to go to ASI's Civic Day at Cal Poly, where we had a little panel discussion about how students could get involved in local and regional and state politics, and they got to ask questions, and it was really fantastic. And also that morning, I was lucky enough to be out with Vice Mayor Pease on the RTA electric bus meet and greet, and fantastic little zip around the neighborhood, little acceleration up Santa Rosa, so that was very exciting. And then on Thursday of last week, we had the City University Quarterly Lunch, which is always fantastic, kind of get into some of the big issues that the city and the university need to coordinate on, housing and student neighborhood issues and all of that. And in the spirit of that, I also got to attend yesterday the Campus Planning Committee, which was mostly focused on future housing projects, including the one that we talked about today for faculty and staff, as well as future faculty and staff housing and all of the student housing that's coming online. Really exciting. They're also looking at a really significant investment in a solar project, which is going to really expand the amount of energy they can create. So really great week.
Great, thank you so much. Vice Mayor Pease.
Thank you. The one item that I wanted to share is just that we did have a SLOCOG meeting, and SLOCOG is having its own kind of budget discipline process here and trying to figure out where to shovel, what to prioritize. So we have big projects, including the Prado Road overpass, and I think we talked last time is that we're not close enough to stay in the current allocation, the 2-year cycle. So it's gotten bumped, and so then, you know, Union Road and Paso is coming up as a big one. There's some overpass or some roundabouts that are coming up, and then it's a managed lane in Pismo Beach, and it's tied to multimodal, and that has cost overruns and requests from the Coastal Commission to do more on the bike trail. And so it's just, anyway, it's the same juggle. So we'll hear more in August once a few things get buttoned up. But there's a program that we started a few years ago, Community Betterment Grants. So instead of having all these big projects, that we would try to fund some of the small ones. And so the city has benefited from some of those. And we did get approval to have another, not quite $500,000 to support that South Higuera Madonna Road as part of that South Higuera plan, to be able to just get a little smoother in there for safety. So so that was a good thing, and people are super supportive of that. So thanks.
Awesome. I remember receiving quite a few emails about that, and actually did a little ride around there. Councilmember Marks.
Thank you. Yes, I actually attended a session at SLO Rep and their children's program with my Rotary Club. The Rotary Club gave a grant of $5,000 for scholarships for children to learn acting. And it was in their new headquarters on Empleo, which is, it was quite impressive. That was on the 22nd. On the 27th, I went to the Memorial Day ceremony at the American Legion there behind the Vets Museum. And it was honoring those who had fought in the Philippines during World War II. And my father was stationed in the Philippines during World War II, so it was very meaningful for me. And I learned a lot about what was going on over there. They had a special display in the museum. There was a meeting of the IWMA Executive Committee on the 31st. There are elections coming up in our June meeting, and I will no longer be the president. I will be the past president. I'll still be on the executive committee, but the incoming president is Robert. His first name and his last name are both Robert. Anyway, he's from Grover Beach, and he should do a good job. And then on the 2nd of June, I was invited to go on a hike with the Chumash, the Northern Chumash Tribal Council, on the Madonna Alberti Twizzleman property, which borders Laguna Lake Park, Madonna Inn property, and Foothill, and includes part of the of Laguna Lake. And that was really an incredible, I didn't quite know when they said, "Do you want to go look at that property?" I didn't quite know what they had in mind. But I'm very happy that we may, as time goes on, hopefully add it to our open space at some point. And it was really a neat experience. So that's all I have.
Awesome, thank you. Councilmember Shorsman.
Yes, thank you. It's been a busy couple of weeks, but the highlights, I'm just kind of trying to look. Good Morning SLO was after our last meeting. Great presentation as always. Always enjoy that. Thanks to the chamber for that. Oh, and then last Wednesday, we had our special HRC meeting to discuss the grants and the reallocation of the grant funds. And so I attended that and kind of provided some context to the HRC as they re-deliberated about that. So I think we'll see that in a few weeks come back to us for approval. They took what we had to say very seriously and made some accommodations appropriately. So I think we'll see what everybody thinks, but they gave it another shot, and I think they did a good job. Then last night, I helped out at the High School Community Service Awards in the high school commons there at SLO High School, and there was probably 100 kids there, and lots of happy parents taking photos, and they have graduation this Friday. So congratulations to all the high school graduates that are going to be walking across the stage and getting their diplomas on Friday. So that's it.
Thank you. That's good stuff. I remember going to that Community Services Awards experience last year at the high school. It was really cool. Let's see. So first, Slow Blues has started. I know that sounds, why am I bringing that up? But it's something that we, hot sauce. Anyway, we always love going to that, but also we as the city support that. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that. We're actually a host family for a player, and we'll probably be at a few more games because of that this year. I got to ride, not that I couldn't always, but I specifically rode the 2A bus last week with one of the Teamster members, and got to meet a few of the drivers and really just understand some of the challenges they're having with driving some of our routes, and it was an interesting conversation. More to come. I went to the Diablo Canyon decommissioning panel, and I just, it's interesting because we are talking about, PG&E and Diablo staying open longer, but there's still this decommissioning engagement panel that's happening, and the offshore wind organization came and shared what they were suggesting and hoping. There were a lot of great questions from the community, and so including Scott Lathrop from the YTT. So many interesting parts that we're continuing to talk about that I think that kind of the community has stopped talking about, but it's still in the process. So very interesting. Went to the ribbon cutting for the 5-year anniversary of Sensorio. Also, they have a brand new exhibit, got to meet the new artists, and I'd never been to it, and really interesting. I wanted to thank the staff and for creating the state of the city. It was quite an experience, and it's still on YouTube if you'd like to see it. And I just really look forward to maybe changing that up in the near future for next year and on. So it's a fascinating thing to really stop and look back at all of last year and what did we do and what are we doing going forward. Also, similar to with some of the individuals who came today in public comment, I did get to meet with a few people regarding the Palestine community and what they are really wanting from the city, and I'll be meeting with them again. And so just continue to meet with people in our community that have concerns and interests about the city and what do we do, and whether they're local or statewide or national or international. So part of what I get to do. And lastly, just wanted to thank the city clerk's office as well as Councilmember Shorsman for the HRC interviews. And I know we'll be bringing a new Human Relations Committee member here soon. And lastly, I was sad to miss the Greek Festival, but I was also at a graduation last weekend. Hope that anyone that got to go to that had a great time. I know I did last year, and wanted to thank Vice Mayor. She'll be taking over in the next couple of days as mayor while I'm out, unfortunately, with a family death. And so just if the community is looking for me, I will not be available for a few days, and we'll go from there. So thank you so much. I look forward to seeing a few people, or actually all of you, on June 13th for a closed session. And then we'll move forward to the regular meeting on June 18th right here in Chamber Hall, or Chamber Room. Council Chambers. Sorry, it's the end of the night. We're early, so I shouldn't be this assembly, but All right, well, have a great night, and we'll see you soon.